There we go. I could yell too. Good morning. Welcome to the January State Board of Education. I know there's a lot going on with school back in full swing, and appreciate you all being here. We will start with a moment of silence. Thank you. First on our agenda, we have Ross White to come up. It's always great to start the day in celebration. Thank you, Ross, for bringing us something to celebrate today.
No problem. Good morning, Ross White, Director for the Division of Career and Technical Education. So I get to bring to you again this month another celebration that we're excited about. So there's a group called the Association for Career and Technical Educators. So it is obviously a professional organization for career and technical educators for the U.S. They do a large awards program for career and technical educators, similar to Teacher of the Year piece. And so they recognize 7 different groups of educators across the U.S. In different areas. And we are fortunate in the state of Arkansas that back in November in Phoenix, Arizona, that one of our own was named the National New Teacher of the Year in the field of career and technical education. So we have here today, I'm going to give you a little bio and then let her come up and speak to you all. So Mindy Lau is a family and consumer science teacher at the Ouachita River School District, specifically on the Akron campus. Mindy has been in the classroom for 6 years. She teaches 7 different courses, the life of small schools and career and technical education. So from family consumer science, food safety, nutrition, food production, child development, career development, and life and fitness nutrition. She's also the FCCLA advisor, which comes with a lot of tasks and jobs in that, which includes many different things. She has been able to secure over $65,000 in grants for her classes through different grant opportunities to continue to grow that. Her FCCLA chapter is very active and currently has a state officer, including the Arkansas state president for that, and 6 regional officers. So she's obviously very active in a pretty rural, small district, giving those students a lot of opportunities, which is what we're always excited about. Another important part of this award is they're always recognizing those that are committed to their professional piece of their career, and so her involvement in the state and different organizations growing career and technical education for our state. So at this time, I would invite Ms. Lowell to come up and join us.
Thank you for having me. This is an incredible opportunity. This whole thing has been an incredible opportunity. I'm super passionate about CTE education. We are a very small district, and I came in non-traditionally pretty late in the game because I raised my kiddos first before I went back to work. So my school district took a chance on me and brought me in as a FACS teacher non-traditionally, and it just kind of hit the ground running to give my kids all the opportunities that they could possibly get. And if it's not with me in FACS, if it's in construction trades or ag, I don't care. I want them to find their passion, not their parents' passion, not their siblings or their peers, their passion, so that they can take it with them beyond my classroom. So this has just been kind of a whirlwind the last 2 or 3 years because it's been a process, but I am incredibly honored, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Congratulations.
Thank you
for coming in and for sharing your work with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
They're only seeing this, they're not seeing like
Maybe take a picture with you?
Sure.
And just for everyone on Zoom, I think there's someone speaking and not on mute. So if anyone on Zoom, please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
Just for reference, her trophy here. So these are student designs. And every year they have a student winner. We haven't yet to win one of those from Arkansas, but we'll work on that. But they do this process with student designs with 3D printer through the 3D processing. And then, of course, that student winner gets a cash prize, gets a 3D printer, gets a whole process in it. And so there's always the unique side to, I think, that award and how that represents the students and kind of grit into that work and the process. And so it's always pretty impressive to see those as well. So I think that's kind of neat for y'all.
This young lady's actually from Las Vegas, and she and I connected at the conference in Phoenix, and she asked to stay connected to me because she was interested in our program. So it's kind of, it builds relationships across the country. So.
That's awesome. Cool.
Amen.
Awesome. We will start now. We'll give a pause for a second while Ms. Rollins gets her computers fixed. We do have all of our board members here with Mr. Sutton have resigned. It has not been filled yet, but we do have some people that will be joining us via Zoom to speak with us, so make sure Kathy gets set up. Break. Great. Good. We will proceed on. Are there any changes to the agenda this morning? Great. We will start with our action agenda. Item 1 is a standards for accreditation waiver request. We have Ms. Worsham on Zoom to present to us today. Good morning.
Good morning, Hope Worsham, Assistant Commissioner of Public School Accountability. We do have 2 schools coming today for considerations of waivers. The first one is the Decatur School District. They are requesting a waiver for 1.A-5, which is class size. They had a student move in that put them at 51 students in 2nd grade. And they have put a paraprofessional in there to help assist with the extra student, with the overage there. And they anticipate that this will not be a problem next year, so they are requesting that waiver. And we do not have any concerns, sorry, from the department.
Okay, thank you. Is Superintendent Watkins or anyone from the Decatur School District on Zoom today? Okay. Board members, do we have questions? Before we were to take a vote, we could connect with them. Ms. Keener, Mr. Wood, any questions? Ms. Hunter, Ms. Rollins, Mr. Henderson,
No.
Mr. Bragg, Ms. Woods, Ms. Long. Okay. Then if there are no questions, then I don't see a concern that they are not here. Floor will be open for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the waiver.
We have a motion by Ms. Rollins. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Hunter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
The second waiver request comes from Pulaski County Special School District. They have 1 student over the class in pre-calculus. They are compensating the teacher for the overage of that particular student at a daily rate of pay, and we do not have any concerns about this particular waiver request. It is for the same standard, 1.A-5.
Thank you. And I believe I see Dr. Williams, Assistant Superintendent of Pulaski County, online. Thank you for joining us today. Did you have any comments here?
No, ma'am. None if there isn't a question.
Okay, we'll see if board members have questions. Ms. Rollins?
I think I don't know if it's a question. Is this a special education student? Did I read that correctly?
No, ma'am.
It's not, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Ms. Hunter? No. Mr. Wood?
No.
Ms. Skeeter? Mr. Henderson? Mr. Bragg? Ms. Woods? Ms. Long? Okay. Then any more comments or questions? Then the floor will be open for a motion.
Move to approve the waiver request.
A motion to approve by Mr. Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Keener. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to look at the Warren School District. I believe first we're going to look at the consideration of the Charter Authorizing Panel's decision for Warren Middle School. Are we gonna, okay, Ms. Summons is gonna introduce us. Sorry. Superintendent Cornish, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for coming today.
Good morning, Dory Summons, Office of Public Charter Schools. The Warren Middle School has rescinded their charter. In 2023, all waivers that are associated with the charters were surrendered at that time. The Charter Authorizing Panel approved of the rescission.
So if I am correct, this will be a vote whether to hear the case of the Charter Authorizing Panel's decision. But we may, do y'all want to provide comments or have questions from board members here?
We can answer questions, and then we'd like to, in our presentation, to ask for 1240 waiver. I think we'll answer some of the questions maybe as to why we didn't renew the charter
Okay.
during that time. Maybe if we can answer, we're welcome to answer questions now.
Should we go ahead and I think it would
I'm
make
not sure
sense
how
to do
that-
the presentation.
Yeah, I think it would go ahead and go
Go.
forward with the 1240 presentation, where they have a certain amount of time to present. And then at the end, you guys could then do two motions, one to either accept, and then whatever you want to do with the waivers.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Stephen, are you giving direction?
All right, I'm just gonna go over the, Stephen Reynolds, staff attorney for the department. I'll just go over the procedures real quick. The district will have up to 20 minutes to present its Act 1240 waiver application, so chair may extend at their discretion. Any party opposed to the waiver will also have 20 minutes to speak in opposition. To my knowledge, the department hasn't received any notice of any opposition to the waiver application. Anyone speaking on behalf of the district or speaking in opposition during the hearing must be sworn in by the state board chair. Any board member may ask any question of any party at any time. The state board may grant in whole or in part, or deny in whole or in part, the proposed waiver, or may take the matter under advisement into a future scheduled board meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to the district for its presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
I believe we do need to swear you in
Okay, yeah.
at this point in time. Anyone who's speaking on behalf of the district that's not an attorney, if you would raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
On behalf of the Warren School District, I'd like to thank the state board for the opportunity to come to you and present to you the, hopefully the opportunity to extend our 1240 waiver at Warren Middle School. Warren Middle School is made up of around approximately 350 students, and have recently been a charter school the previous 9 years, and we felt like moving forward that was not in the best interest of our maybe of our students and our community. We've constantly, it's been a challenge within our community with certain aspects of the charters, particularly speaking to grading. We were on a 1, 2, 3, 4 system, and that's constantly, I don't know if we did a poor job conveying it, or if we just, they couldn't quite grasp that. So we've had our local board has asked that we not continue with the charter at Warren Middle School. We kind of hung on to Warren Middle School because we were getting students moving in from 4th, 5th grade to the middle school, feeding in, and then our high school was a charter, so we were having students leave, so we were trying to stay consistent with those students throughout. But now that that's done, but what we would still like to consider from the state board is a 1240 waiver due to our teacher shortage in our area. And today I have with me Ms. Rhonda Williams, who is our curriculum coordinator and school improvement specialist, and Ms. Kathy Cornish, who is the Warren Middle School principal. and I'll let her speak on behalf of the need for the Act 1240 waiver, and hopefully, as the licensure exceptions through the Department of Ed, as we get some of that finalized, that maybe one day we will not have to come before you and ask for a 1240 waiver. But right now, due to the teacher shortage in our area, and the number of teachers that we have that apply that aren't certified, I would certainly appreciate a recommendation to move forward with our 1240 waiver, and I'll let Ms. Kathy present to you the Warren Middle School data and kind of where we're at with what we have to present for the 1240 waiver.
Thank you. If you don't mind introducing yourself in the microphone before you begin. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cornish, principal at Warren Middle School. And currently, if you'll go ahead with our slideshow, our mission at Warren Middle School is still to provide a learning environment that ensures high levels of learning for all of our students. Our current waivers, let me see if I can get it. There we go. I'm going to come back to that. Our current waivers under the Charter for Teacher Licensures are the following. And so we have used those over the last 9 years with our teacher shortage and being able to put teachers in place in the areas for content areas where they needed to teach. Our district is currently under a 5-year waiver plan, and there's 3 years left after this year, and we want to be able to unify with the district and continue to hire 1240 teachers. Retain our current 1240 teachers. Over the course of our charter, we've had 12 of our 29 teachers that were hired under 1240 waiver or under the teacher licensure waiver, and 5 of those 12 5 of them are still currently working on certification. The other ones received certification. So, and we want to continue to be able to hire 1240 if the need arises in the future. So, over the course since 2018, we have 60 opens at our school district. We hired 46 1240s, and 20 of those teachers retained their full licensure. We currently have 20 teachers in our district that are 1240 out of 131 teachers. And at middle school, and now it says 11 from the previous slide because I did have one that went to another school district. 11 of our 28 teachers were hired under the waiver, and 6 have attained full licensure now. We do have an initiative in our district to grow our own. We do seek to hire graduates in our community that have college degrees and through the 1240 waiver. So many of them are alumni from our district. We do have the teacher cadet program, and now that is called the pre-educator program at our CBEC, at our local CTE school. And we have 4 students that are currently in that program. Some of them are working through the AmeriCorps program at our elementary school or at our preschool. And those students, they are getting concurrent credit, and they can be hired upon graduation as paraprofessionals or enroll into a college and through the Arkansas Teacher Residency Model. We do have some teachers that are going toward the Master's Teachers Program in order to be part of the Arkansas Residency Model. And we have some parapros that are in a program to pursue that route also in our school. So, and 6 of our 1240 teachers at Warren Middle School are alumni and residents of Warren. Okay, to support our teachers, some of the things that we do have a district mentoring program where we partner them up with a mentor teacher, and they're mentored and observed by that teacher throughout the year. Novice teacher training for 3 years at our local co-op. Our content specialists have come in and given huge support to our teachers. Ms. Rhonda, our school improvement specialist, when they're hired, she sits down and starts working with them on learning the curriculum, unpacking the standards, understanding what is needed, also with the unit planning. We do continued professional development. They're part of our content teams, our PLC teams. We do, the district has hired a person that comes in and works with them on passing their praxis. That seems to be the biggest barrier that we have with our 1240 teachers, is being able to pass the praxis exam. So we did contract with a lady that comes in and works with them outside of school time and preparing them for the praxis. And I was hoping I could pull up that progress monitoring, but we have a 5-year step plan for the 1240 teachers that at the beginning of each year, Superintendent Cornish and our Assistant Superintendent Wardlaw and the principals will meet with those teachers, step out exactly what they have to do for the year 1 to continue to a path of certification, and then we meet with them on a regular basis throughout the year to check their progress. We do the same thing for year 2, year 3, and year 4, and year 5.
Let me step in for a second. Our district chose to, we originally started out allowing the 1240 to have 3 years to complete their program. We decided that maybe if we're investing that much time and they're following the procedures and they're reaching those milestones every year, and we've invested 3 years, that let's go ahead and give them additional 2 years to get that far. So far, we've never reached the 5-year. Well, I think right now we have one that's on 5 years. The majority of our teachers that stay within our district, they're through within 3 years. We've got a 4-year and a 5-year right now, and hopefully we may go back to that 3-year. But during that progress monitoring that Ms. Kathy's talking about, that is, we meet with them at the beginning of the year. We sign off, they sign off, and they know their expectation going through the school year as what they must complete throughout the year. And then we check in regular with them, and then we don't offer, we don't allow, if one is struggling, we're constantly monitoring those teachers, and then if we even hints that they're struggling whatsoever, we pull that teacher out and give them a full day or however much time needed to work with Ms. Rhonda one-on-one. She's hands-on, and she's the front line with those 1240s. And when they show up to teach, we normally already have their unit plans designed for them. They know what's expected of them, and Ms. Rhonda's in her classroom, and she's helping them monitor that lesson and model sometimes those lessons with them. So we don't just turn them loose to the wolves and let them go when they show up. So I wish that we don't have that, but that's a 5-year plan that they have that we all, and it has us consistent, and we just hold them accountable to those expectations that they're held to during the school year. Okay.
And so the impact that it's had on our student achievement and learning, we have moved our letter grade from a D to a C school. Our ELA growth, I have a 1240 teacher. Last year was her first year in 8th grade ELA, and 46% of their students were ready or exceeding, which I thought was wonderful, especially in our area. Reading has really been a struggle for us as far as having kids ready or exceeding. We've been able to hire more minority teachers for our diverse population, and offer more face-to-face instruction instead of having to offer a virtual option if we did not have a teacher in the classroom. And we've been able to implement, over the last 2 years, a school-wide tier support system to help kids that are 2 or more years behind, and then students that are struggling with classroom standards.
We're highly committed to hiring a certified person first. Only on an emergency situation have we hired 1240s. We're currently into that situation right now at Warren Middle School. There's been a teacher resign, and so we are, Kathy and I have had conversation about maybe she's teaching the class the remainder of the year instead of hiring a 1240. If we can't find a qualified applicant, we're just not gonna hire someone to throw in to make it through the year if she's willing to go in, or Ms. Rhonda's willing to step in and help out in that. It's a tested area, it's a literacy. And so we don't want to go out and just hire right now 1240. A lot of times our 1240 hiring comes in within a week of school starting. We'll have a teacher resign or have a teacher, and then we're not getting applications. People aren't coming to the community of Warren right now. There's not a lot of job opportunities there, especially for college people that have college degrees. And so I think our Grow Our Own initiative helps us out tremendously. And then just having the reputation of our school is what we have to depend on, hopefully having qualified applicants apply for our positions. So.
All right, from there,
Is that other part not in there?
which one?
The shift.
Yeah, I want to go to that now. Okay, when we talk about the shift, when we came to get the charter approved, we were on the personalized learning spectrum. And in those, it was standards-driven curriculum with proficiency scales in a 4-3-1-2 grading system. It also went through an instructional design component for that, timely assessment system and feedback to our students, learner-centered instruction, data-driven for continuous improvement, and reporting, recording, of course, those grades on a 4-3-1 standards-based report card, and communication with our parents and within our schools. And just to answer, I'll wait and answer that in a minute. Now we're more focused on high levels of learning for all, which we still have our standards-driven curriculum. We still have our district-wide instructional model and instructional design system. We still give our timely feedback and assessments. We're still student-learner system, learner-centered instruction, still data-driven, but moving more toward that traditional grading and reporting. I think that's the main component that's out, and to give that, is our parents couldn't wrap their heads around it. They wanted to know, do I give them ice cream or do I beat them? I don't want to know if they have a 3. I want to know, are they passing? And that was something that our parents never could. We thought that that would help as it grew up with our students, and it didn't. Our parents were just really set in that traditional setting. And then we still have our communication system with our parents and within our school. And mainly there is that grading system with community pushback. They just never really could get that component going. And I would say a teacher turnover, and you're in a standards-based, competency-based system. As the teacher, you have to really be well-versed in knowledge in your content and what standards and the level of DOK within your standards. And when we would have teacher turnover and we would have to hire, let's say, a 1240 who had never taught before, that was a struggle for those teachers. And so our students were working ahead of our teachers, and because the students knew the system, they had been in it. And so it was a real struggle to keep the momentum going and keep our teachers from getting frustrated. And I would say through that, we did lose some teachers to a more traditional setting.
We lost teachers and we lost students. We had students leave and go to another school there, and we lost students, a private school in our area, and also we lost students to just local surrounding other public schools when we started implementing this, and we wouldn't move away from it. So.
And with the pacing issue and mastering their standards, when you have that proficiency skill, sometimes it become a checklist in classrooms and not true student mastery.
So let me rephrase that. We watered it down sometimes just for the teachers that were struggling with it. They would have to water the curriculum down just to satisfy the parent or the teacher, and that's not acceptable. So that's another reason for the shift.
And when we were noticing we knew we had the struggles, we went to a high reliability school summit in Austin, Texas, and there we learned looking at the levels of high reliability schools, and we were on level 4 and 5, where there was levels 1, 2, and 3, and we were missing some major components. Whereas not so much a safe and orderly school, but we were missing the teaching and learning level 2, some components of that, and then we were missing some components of that guaranteed and viable curriculum. And though we were working on it, it wasn't to the level that we went to, so we took a step back at that time and started really focusing on levels 1 and 2 and 3. We are currently certified HRS school, really a district in levels 1 and 2, and working toward level 3 now. And we just wanted to be a unified feeder school. You know, the high school was no longer a charter. We kept our charter to feed into them. And with that, with high school, nor the grades below us having that charter, we don't feel like we need that anymore. So that was our rationale for the change that we are rescinding the charter. Anything that you want?
I think we'll be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll start here, Ms. Rollins, questions? Ms. Hunter? Mr. Wood?
Yep. Why the 3-year request at this time instead of a year-to-year request?
We were trying to unify with the other campuses. I guess it was 2 years ago, our Southeast Arkansas Co-op came before the board and asked for a waiver of 5 years, a 1240 waiver, and all the other campuses on our school in our district have a was granted a 5-year waiver at that time, except for Warren Middle School because they were under the charter. So given a 3-year waiver at this time, that would unify us as a district. We'd all have 3 years left for a 1240 waiver.
Ms. Keener, questions?
Yeah, so, I want to understand the timeline here. So, looking at, it looks like the charter authorizing panel, in December rescinded current waivers, correct? So are you seeking waivers for this year, for current, or for
next school year?
next year? So I understand certainly the teacher shortage that we're in right now in the area and the struggles that y'all are going through, but I'm hesitant to sort of throw in the towel in January. I don't think we're quite at that emergent situation. I want to, I want to wait and hopefully encourage to continue the application process that you guys are going through, to continue seeking those positions and salaries and all the things that we're looking for, and give it a little more time. That's sort of where I am. And as try as you might, I have a feeling you'll be back here, but I'm hoping those numbers will be smaller on the way that you're continuing to develop especially those that are already hired. So that's just a thought of mine. Let me think. I think for now that's my first question.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Henderson?
Thank you for your presentation. Looks like you guys doing a lot of work. With regards to inclusive practices with the PLC project, you mind elaborating a little bit on how you guys measure that, or what do you have in place, or what are you thinking there?
I will let Ms. Kathy and Ms. Rhonda speak to that. They are gurus as far as she's been in their building with inclusive practices now for working with Solution Tree, I guess, for 2 years. And we're just now started getting it in our other schools, so I'll let her speak to that if you will, and she can speak definitely to that as far as where we're at with inclusive practices in our PLC model.
Hey, I'm sorry. We, a few years, I want to say, part of our Level 4 school improvement was that our school go through a PLC academy. And we did, and we fulfilled that, but we still didn't feel like our PLCs were exactly where we needed to be. And then we knew inclusion was coming, and we had a lot of those questions for how would that look in our school, how would that look for our students, how would that look for our teachers. And so as our Guiding Coalition team started speaking, I said, well, there is this inclusive practice, this PLC project. And they said, well, we'd rather know that we're doing it right and get the support that we need now instead of doing inclusion in 3 years and not do it right. And so last year we did our first year of PLC process where a Solutions Tree consultant, Matt Treadway, came in, and he's worked with our Guiding Coalition on really getting our PLC teams where they needed to be. We also developed a school-wide support system for students, and we started last January to where everybody in the building, regardless if you were the PE coach, if you were the choir teacher, if you were the band teacher, everybody had a group of students that we supported on the essential standards that if given the common formative assessment that tells if the kid needs support, then we divided them into groups. And we did that in our PLC team. So everybody in our school work toward that. Everybody understands our mission is to move all of our kids in the direction that we need them to. And so that really, I think, helped us change our letter grade more because we had more collaborative efforts among our teachers and really looking at our schools as an individual. And then this, at the end of last year, the SPED department that was working with us also on the inclusive practice said, hey, we would like to extend that another year for you. Plus, we would like to extend that to your 2 elementary schools. And so we were like, yes, we would love to. And so we've continued that work. And this year, we were able to set aside one whole period that was split into 2 blocks. And if you know much about our school, we still have close to 60% of our kids that are not reading on grade level. And so you can't just expect the classroom teacher to fill those gaps. And we couldn't do it with just an intervention time. And so we kind of split it up. We have what we call vitamin C, which is more tier 1, where every student in the building is getting some intensive support on where they're lacking. And then the other part, they're getting support on grade level standards. So I think that's what's helped us in our PLC process, and to really hone in more on the individual needs of the kids.
And with the success at middle school, that's trickled down now into our other elementary schools and into our high school as well. They're just at the very beginning stages of the Inclusive Practice and PLC projects.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And as I go into the classrooms and I'm looking at the inclusive practices that are taking place, this is what it looks like now compared. It would be where our resource teacher is in their team teaching with a teacher. And so it's very good to see. And as far as like their units and things, the inclusive practices PD that we've been going through has helped our teachers learn how to take that standard and break that standard down so that they know where to start. That was one of our things, they just didn't know where to start. And so they have really helped us really bring it all together for all students.
And I will say this, on our special education teachers, the big thing was, what's my role now? And so now it's kind of, when I had a teacher that was really, you know, a little bit resistant about it. She'd been a SPED teacher for 20 years, and after a while she was like, okay, I get it now. And so when she started this year, our SPED teachers are for grades 6, 7, 8 are all pushed into the general ed classroom. And then they have components where they can give small group support in their classroom if needed. And they were like, I understand now, an 8th grade standard, how to help scaffold that with the teachers. So the teachers plan together, they work together, and they give support to those students. So when we're saying all means all, it means all. Like in our intervention time, a resource teacher may have general ed kids, and the students with IEPs go into the specialist, the teacher that's fully or certified or a specialist in that content area. So it's really kind of shifted how we're approaching, I would say, student-centered learning in the building.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Bragg? Ms. Woods?
I just want to make just a couple. First of all, I commend you for making the change, because it's hard when you identify something that's not working, and I know you've put in a lot of work. Can you talk about where your 1240 teachers, which classrooms they're in? I mean, I know it's a lot of them, but just kind of give us a breakdown. I didn't write it down. How many teachers do you have total in the district?
We have 131 teachers in the district.
Okay.
And we're between, I don't have the exact number, 15 to 20 1240s in the district.
Okay.
We're getting some of those certified, that's been certified since the beginning of this year. I think, Ms. Kathy, you speak to where your 1240 teachers are at Warren Middle School. I will tell you, district-wide, it's a lower number on the elementary level. At high school, it is a higher number. And I think middle school would fall in. We started the year off with maybe 6 at Warren Middle School. One just recently passed his test, so he's no longer 1240. So I think we have 5 now that are 1240 teachers, and their math, literacy. One of those success stories was a 1240 teacher that's a graduate of Warren, and she blew the board. She did exceptionally well this year. Her students did on the ACT Aspire. You want to speak to exactly what numbers where those are?
Right now I currently have 5. I have 1 that's in social studies, 1 that's in science, 1 in ELA, 1 in PE, and 1 in art.
The one in science was hired, we had to hire that teacher in October. So that was a hire after a teacher resigned.
So you're putting your certified teachers in math and literacy?
As much as possible, yes, ma'am. As I said earlier, the science teacher that we were talking about, that was an emergency situation where we had a teacher resign in the middle of the year. And we're trying not to do that with the literacy teacher that's resigned at middle school. We're trying to work around putting a non-certified teacher in that area.
What about the high school?
High school, it's a smorgasbord there. There are teachers teaching literacy and math at the high school level and science that are 1240s.
And other than just mentorship, are we giving them any other resources? I mean, how are kids' grades doing in their class?
We constantly monitor those, and the principal does a really good job of staying on top of the teachers, making sure that the grades aren't suffering in those. And for the most part, the 1240 teachers at the high school are doing exceptionally well, but it is closely monitored. If we do see a setback somewhere, as I said earlier, Ms. Rhonda's grabbing them and we're taking them in and we're working them through their issues or challenges that they may have.
What we normally do with the 1240, if they're hired before the school year, I pull them over in the summer with me, and we go through our instructional model all the way to unit planning, what your standards are. And then I go in and monitor we consider them like on a tier 3. It's something that we did in the district. I go in with them once a month, and I meet with them also outside of that, their class time, to go over their units ahead of time to make sure that what they are teaching is centered around the standard and at the rigor that it should be. So, and we bring in our co-op specialists. If it's math, if it's science, if it's ELA, we bring in those specialists and they work with them also.
And I guess my last question, the 2 teachers that you talked about that were on their 4th and 5th year, what is the communication to them and what happens if they don't complete it?
The year 5 teacher will receive a non-renewal letter at the end of this year. We have went out and got additional support for those 2 teachers. And they've been working with an outside source. They've been working with our co-op specialists. They've been working with Miss Kathy. They've been working with Miss Rhonda. And they're missing it by a little bit. And they're taking the test pretty much monthly now, as much as possible, to hopefully pass those tests. They're not bad teachers at all. We'd love to keep them, but if in the event that it doesn't happen, then they will be non-renewed. That's in our school district policy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. I just want to make a clarification, something you said this at the beginning. So your district as a whole, your other schools already have the waiver
Yes,
for
ma'am.
teacher licensure.
Yes, ma'am.
The reason why the middle school, you didn't seek the waiver for the middle school at the time was because they were a charter conversion and they had the waivers under that.
Yes.
Now that you've rescinded the charter, you're asking for a 3-year waiver to match the rest of the district and the practices that you have.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was something that I had not caught earlier, but when you said that, I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify
that's the purpose of that.
So you have it for your high school already?
I'm sorry,
your
maybe we didn't make that clear earlier.
No, you, when you said it, it just, for me.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes. That's the purpose of us being here today. Hopefully it's not, I mean, the teacher shortage and then getting on the same page with the other campuses in our district. And we'd like to keep some of these 1240 teachers that we currently have employed. And if not granted the 1240 for 3 years, then those teachers will be non-renewed at the end of the year because they won't be able to be employed without the 1240. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thanks.
May I ask, I haven't heard you speak, you're seeking a waiver for library and media specialists and also for the teacher salary fund. Can you speak to why those waivers are there?
Tripp, could you speak to that for us, please? I was under the impression that we did not ask for the library and media specialist waiver.
Okay.
Okay, well, I was just, because we didn't see a huge need for the library and media specialist at the time, and I don't know, the attorney that was working with, Mr. Reynolds, I thought we.
Okay, you know what? Now that I think I printed my agenda off a few days ago, and I see that it's updated here, and I don't see my library and media specialist on it, but I do see the teacher salary fund.
Yeah.
Why is that waiver there, and what are your salary set at this year?
No, I mean, of course, the salary is an issue, but I mean, we will, yeah, would you speak to that and, please?
Yes, if you introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely.
You have to swear him in.
He's an attorney.
Oh, he's the attorney, okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dr. Moore, members of the board, Deputy Commissioner Smith. My name is Tripp Walter. I'm a staff attorney with Arkansas Public School Resource Center. That particular waiver request that Dr. Moore is talking about, I want to make sure all that says is that if you're going to pay a teacher out of district funds, the teacher has to be licensed. It has nothing to do with how much the district's paying, those kind of things. It's just if they don't, and this is commonly held among charters as well, because if you have an unlicensed teacher, this waiver would allow you to pay them from the same funds that you would your licensed teachers. That's all that it does.
Okay, so it's not a waiver from the minimum salary schedule?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No,
I
it
asked
isn't.
him to clarify that because I would botch that trying to explain that. I'll just be honest with you.
Okay, and it doesn't prevent you from receiving state funding for the teacher salary fund, does it?
No.
Okay.
have anything to do with the minimum salary schedule and that's another separate piece of statute.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any additional questions?
I just want to clarify, so is our action number one to accept the charter panels?
So yeah, so there'll be two actions. The
Okay.
first one is to accept or
Reject the rescission?
actually, I think that at that point in time, it would be whether to have a hearing
Oh, okay.
to accept or reject. We vote on the charter authorizing panel's decisions to hold a hearing or not. So the first one would be have a hearing. If we have the hearing, then I think the waiver request would also be voted on at a later time. But then if we don't, the second one would be for the waiver request.
Can we even
Questions?
discussion?
Yes.
You know, something, I'm new to learning about charter schools and things like that, and something that I've heard often kind of when doing my research and digging into this is how common it is for these waivers for charter schools for 3 years, for 5 years. And while I understand that it's common practice, I just am not in the mindset that it's the best practice. And I'm hesitant to match a practice that I disagree with. So, in my opinion, moving forward, I'd like to change that common practice and perhaps go back to a single year, understanding that as, you know, in the few years that as your current waivers expire, that we would follow that same practice going back to just a single year in the hopes that, you know, the teacher shortage, things like that will improve, that we can continue getting the Grow Your Own policy that you guys have been working on, or practice that you've been working on. Because again, as you mentioned at the very beginning, you understand that the very best way to see the best outcomes is to have the most qualified individual in front of the kids. I appreciated that, by the way. I was glad to see that at the beginning. So that's sort of where I stand on this, that, you know, as common as the practice is, I don't believe it's perhaps the best practice, and I don't want to repeat it.
Questions, additional comments, board members?
I have a question, I guess, maybe for the department regarding the other schools in the district were granted 5-year waiver request. Can someone speak to the wisdom of that? Why was that granted a couple of years ago? I don't necessarily remember it, but I might not have been here then.
Yeah, so it would have been, because they said originally it was a 5-year waiver, so that would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, no, I don't remember the hearing on that request and why it was granted at the time. I do know Ms. Saraceni has some numbers, and she's pulled on the Warren School District with their 1240, and has some comments. So if we might want to hear from her, because she's the one who kind of follows up on some of those pieces.
I find myself conflicted in that I understand the district's concern about alignment of all their schools being on the same plan. I appreciate that. But I also share Ms. Keener's concern about this blanket 5-year, you know, it doesn't feel like that's in the best interest of the students.
No, and that was, you know, previously when Dr. Pfeffer was here, that was something she was really kind of tackling about, instead of having blanket waivers, to be much more specific in shortage areas.
Yep.
Another area that the department itself is tackling is right now Ms. Saraceni's group is working on the teacher licensure rules and trying to open that up and create those additional pathways. That was part of one of the executive orders from the governor about trying to streamline our pathways. So we're in the midst of rule changes. And I think that Superintendent Cornish actually alluded to that at the beginning, about as we are making changes here at the department, some of these restrictions that we have that are super tight, they're going to open up a little bit and provide some more flexibilities for districts. Right now, it's pretty tight in terms of what you're licensed in, what you can teach in the classroom. One of the things that we have been concerned about is open waivers and a district not keeping track and those teachers actually getting certified. And we have seen cases in which we had districts who had blank open waivers and got very, very messy, had teachers all over the place. In fact, that's one of our takeover districts, where they did not keep up with that progress. And so when they were talking about keeping up with it and having teachers in those, that was refreshing to me. The data, Carly could confirm whether or not what they were saying and the data, if it matches up. So I would like to hear Carly to be able to say, yes, it matches up on our end, what they're saying is true, or we have some concerns. So I think that would be helpful.
Carly Saraceni, Assistant Commissioner of Educator, Effective and Licensure. Good morning. Just so to kind of piggyback on what they've already told you about themselves, I have numbers that really show that they're really moving in the right directions. We went back several years so that we could talk about it for you. Back in 21, 22, 22, 23, about 30% of their staff was unlicensed. As of this year, it's down to 22%, which is that's 8%. And so when you look at, they are working with us all the time. They're calling. And our next talk is the apprenticeship, because when you talk about a waiver for 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, when you get a person in a program and you can only give them a year-to-year contract, that old HR in me's coming out just a tad, it's hard for people to stay vested. And so that's what you also have to look at. Because I don't know if y'all are aware, but some of our districts are utilizing their Title II funds, which is teacher quality funding, and they're even providing some of that financial support for these people to get on these pathways to get licensed. So it makes it even harder. It almost becomes that hardship on some of our districts that are trying to be proactive and be positive and try to get all of their teachers certified. So when I don't have concerns with Warren, because they pick up the phone and they call us all the time, and not just me. Melissa Jacks, if she was in the room, would tell you they're always calling and asking us. The other thing, that's just on the licensed teachers. In 2021, they had 11 teachers on additional waivers. Well, you know, I was licensed in one area, but I was teaching out of area. We had 11 back in 21. We have 3 in 24. So they are really moving in the right direction. If you want exact numbers, in 21 they had 11. In 22 they had 5. Then this year they're down to 3. So they are getting people licensed. They're looking at the apprenticeship. We're not talking about it today, but hopefully in the future we'll bring that back to you. So I'm not as concerned. The other thing is 74% of their staff have more than 3 years experience, which I think is also headed in the right direction. Only a little over 25% has less than 3 years. I mean, these are the numbers that I look at, because, you know, when it's changeover, we know that the more the teachers are there and in the school, we know it's better for kids because they're making the biggest impact. This past year, they only had 16 new teachers. So they're starting to retain their teachers. They're getting them licensed, and that's what my staff and me, that's what we want to see, is them moving in the right direction.
What's the average time frame from day one hiring a 1240 teacher to certification for the ones that have become certified?
It can vary from 1 year to 3 years, what I've seen mostly. Some of them will just really need to pass an exam to be licensed, and that seems to be the biggest challenge right now of a 1240 teacher when we hire them, is getting them to be able to pass that praxis exam. And when we've I think there's been an alternative where the cut score's been lowered in some areas. I think that's helped a couple of our teachers to get certified. But
how often can they take that?
Well, I'm not certain on the exact day. I know I've got one right now that's taking it every opportunity that she can, and it seems like it's monthly. Do you know the exact day on the?
Depending on the exams, 30 to 45 days it locks you out, that you can't retake it. But as he was speaking to the praxis, we have to remember these Act 1240s do not always have an education degree. It's in another field. So they need a little bit more time to learn that content, because some of those praxis exams, like let's look at secondary math, the 7-12, so you have anywhere from general math to stat, to trig, to calculus. So, you know, if you haven't had one of those classes in a few years, you have to kind of go back and refresh yourself on that content. Even though you may not be teaching that, you're tested on it. So that's just one example. But yes, it's about a 30 to 45 day window that they can't take that exam.
A lot of these 1240 teachers are making a financial obligation as well when they're signing with the district to go get their masters. A lot of them go through the MAT program. When they do complete it, they'll have their masters, and that can be a $6,000 to $7,000 investment. And sometimes that takes more than a year to be able to get that master's license.
So, and I'm sorry if somebody else has questions, feel free to interrupt me. If I understood it, you have 5 teachers remaining at the middle school that are on 1240?
Yes, sir, at Warren Middle School.
Yes, at the middle school. And of those 5, what would be the longest projection for all 5 of those to
You want to speak to
obtain their
exactly the ones you
certification?
have? I think we're close on a few of those, and then, go ahead.
I have one that this year's her 5th year, one's in 4th. I have one, one that's in her 2nd and 2 that's in their 1st year. So I would say, you know, the next 2 should be within a year. The other ones will probably be within a year or 2. I mean, the ones with their 1st year of teaching, they are currently enrolled all in the MAT program at UAM, so they're finishing up their coursework and working toward their praxis.
Okay.
One of the things I can, one of the things I can really appreciate is when Mr. Cornish was talking about sort of that job security and how that feels as a teacher in January, February, March. Am I going to get renewed? Am I going to have a job? And so I kind of want to change my stance on it feeling like an emergency, that right now teachers are looking ahead and they don't want to go into the summer. I also appreciate you mentioned that understanding if you hire them and sign contracts or whatever in the spring, that you can work with them in the summer. So, you know, I think I'm sort of changing my view on that emergent situation and understanding that maybe while I'm hesitant to grant it for 3 years, that maybe for 1 year, we can ensure these teachers that, you know, they do have job security and encourage that retention, and but maybe just a year at a time, and then see where the numbers are next year.
Can I just ask, how much does it cost to take the praxis?
The praxis content test is around, it averages around 135, but if you're looking at someone that also has to take the foundations of reading, that's even more expensive than the praxis. That's a Pearson exam. It's quite.
So this teacher, the one that's on the 5 year, she's paying $135 every month.
Every time that they take that. And there's some that, you know, that's why we're doing as much as we can to provide at the co-ops. And I know y'all are utilizing that we're using and paying for vouchers for 240 tutoring, study.com. There's a lot of different ones out there. And then also for the Science of Reading, Foundations of Reading, I worked with Dr. Pride's group, and we actually have tutors and that we pay after hours, literacy coaches. And so, I mean, we try to work with them as best we can, but again, when you've not gone through a lot of times a traditional program, you're having to learn that knowledge, those skill sets, and so it takes a little bit of time. And also, most of our alt routes, most of them are 2 years, and we have a couple that are 3 to complete. I know that's probably what you were trying to ask.
My heart goes out to her. I mean, I only took the bar exam, but incredibly smart people fail these tests every day, and so that is not a reflection on her.
Questions, Mr. Henderson?
Yeah, I really appreciate the department sharing those stats. When I asked earlier about, you know, some measurements and data, I'm really glad that you were able to back that up, because I like, what do I see? I like to see numbers. And, you know, I too share the same concern as Mr. Woods and Ms. Kenner about making conflicting decisions, but I also believe in the power of being consistent amongst the district. I think having that disconnect, no one wins. So happy to say that, I do believe in what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
On your current waivers for the district, because it always confuses me when we talk about expiring dates, like in the middle of the year, like that makes it difficult. So is it through the, so when you said, we're saying 3 years, is that through the, obviously, so it would be through the rest of this year? It would be through the 24-25 school year, and then you're asking through the 25-26 school year? Would all of your waivers end at the 25-26 school year then? Or is it rolling over into the mid of the next year? Like, I think there's some clarity pieces there for me too.
I think it would, right now, we're currently under our second year with the 5-year waiver that the,
And does it go all the way through the school
it
year?
goes
do
all the
you
way
know?
through the school year is my understanding, yes.
So I would just, as you guys are thinking of a motion, if you'll think in terms of, like, through the school year in terms.
Sure.
So maybe that would kind of
Mhm.
help us even try to get some
Yeah.
pieces there.
Well, and the waivers from the charter that, even though the vote is not to move forward with the charter, those waivers cover you for this year, so I think it, like you said, it would go into 26-27, which was what y'all were thinking, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a long way out,
Yeah,
but
I'm trying
be
to-
here
trying to
before we
get my
know
head
it.
wrapped around that.
Okay, thanks.
Questions, board members?
I'll just say this, I'm probably gonna vote against the 3-year waiver request, but it's not, I don't want y'all to take it as an offense at what y'all are doing. It sounds like y'all are working very hard to get to full certification. I understand that that causes an inconsistency in the district, but I would like to just create an urgency among administrators that, you know, 5-year, long-term waiver requests aren't routine or rubber stamped or just common. Yeah, I think that I'm all about working with people that are doing hard work, and I would vote to approve a waiver request through the end of the 24-25 school year, but not one longer than that at this time.
Would it be feasible to say that we'd to maybe give the approval for a 3-year waiver with the requirement that we report back yearly to give an update? Is that an option, or is that something that the board?
It's been done
Yeah.
before, it just depends on the
I
motion
just
that's
asked
made
if
by the
that's-
board
If
member.
that's something that the board would want us to report back if we did a 3-year,
So
to give a yearly update.
how does that benefit you exactly if we did it that way?
If we did a
If-
3-year?
If we did a 3-year that you reported back.
Well, I
to
was
us
just asking if
annually.
that's something maybe that you all wanted to consider, that we would give you an update as to where we're at as far as hiring certified and 1240 teachers.
Right.
Continues to
but-
provide accountability.
Yes, and I was just asking that if that may be an option for you all, if that, or if not, I mean, I was just,
That's an interesting option to me, with the understanding that if the report back or something from Ms. Saraceni isn't in line with sort of the plan, that at that point we could change the 3-year contract. How does that? I think we can
Well,
always
and I
pull a
think that's
waiver.
really my question. I mean, like,
yeah.
like what is
Yeah, I
the
see what you-
material
yeah.
difference between a 1-year
Yeah.
waiver versus 3-year?
I just
check-ins?
would like to ask for the 3 years to keep the consistency, and then to keep have the teachers, know that they're, when they sign on, as long as they're meeting their requirement, that they don't stand, that they understand that they're still gonna be employed the following year in the event that we have to hire a 1240 teacher. And we're competing with other schools around us that have to hire 1240s as well. And a teacher has an option to come, or a 1240 teacher has an option to come to the Warren School District, or they have an option to go to another school district that has a 1240 waiver. Well, they're gonna choose that other district, because at Warren, they're only guaranteed for that 1 year.
That's the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, I can't guarantee them that they can be there, for the 3 years. Where the
As
other,
they work toward
as
their
they, yes, ma'am.
And I'm of the mindset that if you're not certified, maybe you don't have the luxury of that guarantee for year after year, until you can get that certification. If that's your long-term plan, you're moving on that path, and it'll be a no-brainer once you get that certification.
May
I
I-
agree with that, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I think that puts more responsibility on the department and on this board to not allow district hopping or school hopping by uncertified individuals that, well, I can't be at Warren for 3 years, so I'll go over here where I can fit into a 3-year waiver. I agree with your concern there, but rather than just grant a 3-year waiver, I think we should be mindful of how easily we hand out waivers and put pressure on that individual to continue pursuing certification as fast as possible.
Well, and I think your point is well taken. I don't know how we can actually track that because the waivers are given to the districts, not to the people, to the, so I don't know if there is any kind of tracking, on that point.
Carly Saraceni. One thing we do track when they are working as teacher of record, which these actual 40 waivers are, my division supports novice teachers year 1, year 2, and year 3, and we do keep track if they're in those first years. I have mentoring specialists in every co-op, and matter of fact, they're getting mid-year reports to me right now because I'm all about looking at numbers to see how many that you have unlicensed, how many are going through your 240 tutoring, things like that. I even ask for what your pass rates of if they go through tutoring, if it's a group tutoring. So we do track that. So we could give you some reports on a yearly basis.
So when you're tracking those numbers, is it by district or are you actually getting down to the employee level? I mean, like to say, I was teaching under a 1240 waiver at Warren this year or for 2 years, and then I was like, I can't, and so now I'm going to skip over to a different district and work under their waiver.
If they've already, if it's beyond their first 3 years, no. If it is within those first 3 years, yes.
Well, thankfully, I know, Ms. Kathy, is that correct, Ms. Cornish? That you seem to have, you track it by the individual, which I can appreciate, and so that's reassuring.
And to ask a clarifying question, when you all sought the waiver for your elementary school and high school, that was with the Southeast Co-op, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that was in 2022, and the entire, which we have a lot of board members that weren't here.
Yeah.
The entire region came to request this waiver. There was a lot of concerns, but at the end of the day, it was passed for all the districts and their co-op. But at that point in time, you didn't do it for your middle school since it was under the charter.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay.
I think that's a really good, important point that you made. So that means almost all the districts in your co-op region have that waiver for that many years. And this might be an area, Jeff, with your subcommittee conversations that we've talked about, in areas of reports and when is it time to pull someone in. This could be a topic that you're looking at as a region and groups that you're calling in a subcommittee level. And then if you see that it needs to be pushed up to the full board, then, I mean, so that might be the way to be able to do that without it always having, like, this board trying to keep everybody year to year to year, that subcommittee level, that might be a way to do that. And then being able to stay consistent within the region with the number of waivers given, because right now, you know, Southwest region school districts all are on this 5-year track. So you could look at the entire region as a whole, instead of them having one school that's not on track with everyone else. Just something to consider. What you're saying today resonates with everything that we've been saying at the department and some of the initiatives and pushes that we're doing. So but I do feel like we've got this like one isolated school that did something different as a charter conversion, trying to do something different, and they're not linked in with everybody else.
But what you just said, is that a statement of fact or was that a hypothetical? That everyone else in the region is on a 5-year track, 5-year waiver?
Yeah, the co-op came with every district, and they all requested the waiver at the same time and received it. There was a lot of discussion at that point by the board, but it was passed.
Maybe I'm missing something, but understanding that Ms. Cornish is on top of this and that she's tracking each individual, what is the downfall of a single school moving to a single year while the remaining district is working through? I guess I'm missing where that consistency is so important outside of district hopping, you know, like we talked about. Is there something else that is going to add an extra challenge, an extra layer that I'm missing? Because if not, maybe
I was
we
like, I don't
start
think I
with
understand your
y'all.
question.
Okay, so we keep hearing it's important for this region to be consistent. So what's the challenge to not being consistent, to starting with this Warren Middle School, to moving them to a year? As the new ones come up, we move them to a year. Where's the challenge that I'm missing outside of district hopping teachers? Is there something, you know, that, because we're not talking inconsistencies within a single building, and Ms. Cornish has, you know, proven that she's watching these year by year and supporting. So what am I missing?
I think that there can be discussions with the board moving forward as to how we hold the Act 1240 waiver hearings. Every district is on a different timeline. This was in my knowledge, this is the only time a whole region co-op has come to request a waiver at the same time. So we're going to see a lot of discrepancies across the states in that sense.
So a discrepancy within a region is no different than a discrepancy across the state for us, as far as we're concerned.
I think this might be one of the only times where it would be within districts, you know, where buildings are doing different things within their district. And assuming that because they're choosing to voluntarily surrender their charter, if they would have retained that, they would have retained these waivers. So that's, you know.
Well, and they were able to work through the struggles of having an isolated charter school within that region, within that district. I don't see that this waiver is going to add an extra layer of challenge unless, again, there's something that I'm missing.
Just to play devil's advocate, because I do remember the co-op now coming. I will say from the beginning, I've done some research into 1240 waivers because I'm like, I don't love them. I told Secretary Key that a lot. I was like, why are we doing this? Because I'm with you. I don't like them, but I'm like, what's our alternative? Like, how do we get the schools the resources that they need to be able to teach our kids? So I feel that. I don't know, just playing devil's advocate, that it kind of feels punitive towards them to not give them the waiver because they identified a problem and they said, here's our solution, but we have to go to the board to fix it. And now we're like, well, maybe we start and make an example out of you that we're not going to renew it for 3 years. That's what's going on in my mind. I mean, I'd love to just say, if you want a waiver, you get it for a year and then you come back. But I also struggle with, I don't know that this is the right situation to start that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And I certainly don't want it to feel like an example, but more changing the common practice of blanket waivers. And it's just unfortunate that it happens to be Warren Middle School. And, you know, it's got to be somebody at least. I appreciate that. Thank you.
If you had never had the charter for the middle school, you'd be under these waivers anyway, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir, we'd be under the waiver if we wouldn't have had the charter.
So the waivers for the district.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We're having a lot of different discussions. I do think, maybe I would say, in addition to, and committee will have that discussion later, maybe doing a workshop at some point on Act 1240 waivers to see the status of where districts are. I think this sounds like a conversation that we need to continue overall as to policies of where this board is headed in granting 1240 waivers. And, you know, we're already gearing up for the fiscal session, but thinking about a session in a year from now, if we are continuously giving waivers to laws, then maybe there's broader discussions about those laws as well. Not a comment on teacher licensure per se, but these are the kind of conversations we have. That being said, we do have these two motions here. Is there any more discussion or questions for the district on one? Again, the first vote is to review or not review the charter authorizing panel's decision. The second one after that is on these waiver requests.
If we vote not to review the charter, that accepts
the charter authorizing panel's vote to rescind the charter.
Okay, I make a motion to not review the charter authorizing panel's decision.
Okay, there's a motion on the table by Ms. Keener, a second by Ms. Woods to not review the charter authorizing panel's decision. Is there any discussion or questions before we take a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next on the table is action 2B, which is the consideration of the Act 1240 waivers. Any questions, more comments, or a motion? Ms. Keener?
So I'd like, understanding the issue of teacher retention, job security, things like that, and understanding you've got teachers you want to keep in the classroom. until we can have a further discussion, I think I'd like to make a motion to grant a 1-year waiver for Warren School District.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Keener to grant a 1-year waiver. Is there and the 1-year waiver being through the school year?
No,
You said
I was thinking more for teacher retention and job security, that those teachers, she could go to those teachers and ensure them they have a job for the following year. So I would say through the end of next May, or
Okay.
whenever.
So through the end of the 2024-2025 school year. Okay.
So
Questions?
Protocol question.
Yes.
So if we are not in favor of a 1-year waiver, but more in favor of a 3-year waiver, can there then be a second motion?
So there,
Rules?
let's see.
Doesn't
So
have
we don't have a second
No,
on.
I mean, is this a one
Yeah.
and done?
No,
That's
I
true.
think if nobody seconds
That's
that,
true.
then it fails.
Yeah.
And we can do a second motion for whatever.
Yes. So right now on the table, there is a motion by Ms. Keener for a 1-year waiver. Is there a second to that motion? There's a second by Ms. Rollins. So the floor is open. There is a process to do a substitute motion, but there's also the process of we will go vote on this, whether it goes through or not.
I would just like to briefly explain
Comments?
why I've decided to change my mind on this. I'm gonna vote for the 3-year waiver request because of the prior board granting the whole region the 5-year thing. And I agree that if you were not a conversion charter school at the time, you would already be under this. I'm reluctantly doing this. I don't like 5-year waivers. That's shocking to me that was done. I'm sure there's a reason, and I'll listen to that. I won't be so freely voting for them in the future, but it only makes sense in this particular situation.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, we will go ahead and do the vote on the motion for a 1-year waiver by Ms. Keener, seconded by Ms. Rollins. I think we'll go ahead and do a roll call on this one to make it cleaner. So we'll start down here. Ms. Keener,
Yes, aye. Sorry.
Mr. Wood,
No.
Ms. Hunter,
No.
Ms. Rollins, Mr. Henderson,
No.
Mr. Bragg,
No.
Ms. Woods.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails. So now we're back on the table. A motion for item 2B.
Just to clarify, if we vote on a 3-year waiver, there is an annual or yearly accountability in place.
There is not. That would have to be put into the motion.
Okay.
So the floor is open if anyone wants to make a motion now.
I'll make a motion for the 3-year, but I would like to add in the annual reporting. I feel like that's fair to start with y'all on that, but it gives you the assurance you can go forward in your actual like HR planning and as you do that. But it also starts to help us set the pathway of we're not handing out waivers voluntarily and there will be accountability when it comes to it. And knowing that we have the ability to pull it off if next year things start changing. So I'll make a motion for the 3-year with annual reporting.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Woods to accept the waiver request by the Warren School District for 3 years with an annual reporting requirement. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Hunter.
Before we vote on that,
Yes.
I would like the board and the department to consider making the same yearly reporting requirement of everyone in that co-op that received this large 5-year waiver. I don't think it's fair for Warren Middle School.
Can I?
Everybody else doesn't have to do it.
So I think that would have to be an action item we would have to add. I will say that we have done that, in my tenure on the board, that has been done, and it proved to be very unfruitful because they would just put in some anecdotal comments about what was to be said. So I would recommend that if we were to, they would throw in a few, these people are doing great. They would maybe tell us the number of teachers, very little information about student achievement. I would say this would be something potentially in a workshop we could go over, think about what would make sense to be reported and spell that out so that we don't have districts just coming up here to tell us they have 5 people and 2 are doing okay.
I do think there's an opportunity here where Ms. Saraceni and her team, just as she was able to pull the numbers specifically for what this district did, she could pull the numbers for everyone in that region, look at them, If there is a concern, she could then do a report to this board, and then if you choose to call in a specific district, you could. And that could be some of that subcommittee work as well, as we talked about. You do what I'm saying? I mean, like, to me, that's some.
Okay, so we have a motion for a 3-year waiver with reporting requirements by Ms. Woods. I just lost my mind. Was there a second to that? Okay, a second by Ms. Hunter. I apologize. We will do a roll call vote here. Ms. Keener?
No.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Hunter?
Yes.
Ms. Rollins?
No.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Bragg?
Yes.
Ms. Woods?
Yes.
Okay, so motion passes.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Bragg.
Thank you
Thank you
guys.
all.
I appreciate all your time.
Yeah, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations I think we have, and look forward to a work session further on this. So next, we'll go ahead and move along. Mr. Reynolds is going to present the rules for special education and related services.
Good morning, Stephen Reynolds, staff attorney for the department. Before you is Section 10, mediation and hearings of the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education Rule governing special education. This rule was approved for release for public comment by you all at the July 14th meeting. No public comment was received. This rule is before you for final approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Questions, Ms. Keener?
No.
Mr. Wood?
Yes, this is the special education related services?
Yes.
So I do have a couple questions. Came up just recently in talking with some other individuals. Page 14, the removal of the definition of impartial hearing officer, slightly concerning to see a striking language that says that hearing officer has to be an impartial, trained individual. Do you feel that the new language adequately requires the same thing, impartial and trained?
Yeah, I think that most of the bulk of the revisions to this rule were done for some federal monitoring by the Department of Education. But what you're referring to is this is language that was struck that's not specifically provided for in IDEA, and so that we tried to revise the language to get the same meaning, but without the more restrictive requirement, I guess.
There was a piece in there that also removed the SEA, which I understand to be the state education agency, as the hearing officer. And now it's done with a third party. Is that correct? So I think maybe even removing the SEA, which I can't remember exactly what page that's on, but maybe having the state as the hearing agency was pretty unfair, so maybe removing that helps with the third party and an impartial.
Yeah.
I saw that too.
Well, okay.
Okay.
Second question I have is there, does the department ever, and I didn't find it in the rules specifically, does the department ever follow up with the parents of a student to see if they are satisfied with how the district or the school is carrying out the hearing officer's decision? Because I understand the process to be that if a parent might not be satisfied, that they then have to essentially file another complaint or grievance or whatever, request another hearing, go through the whole process again, where it seems as though there may be some efficiency if the department checked in and act as a level of accountability for whether or not what the hearing officer decided.
That is a great question for a special education expert, and I have one right here.
Thank you, Courtney Salas Ford. And I am answering since I used to serve in that role for the department, and the person in that role now is not here. But the reason that we don't do that is once a parent or anyone else files a complaint and it goes through the investigation process, of course they are interviewed, but once the department determines whether there was any violations and any corrective actions that need to be done, it's on us as the department to ensure that they are complying with the federal law.
if we were to check in with a parent, that would be a continuous back and forth of is the parent satisfied? That's not the standard that we are trying to reach. The standard that we're trying to reach is that they are complying with federal law. The parent may never be satisfied with
Fair
that.
enough. Is there accountability from the department to the district to ensure that the hearing officer's decisions are being followed?
Yes, absolutely. It is
Okay.
our burden to ensure that, and that's a different scenario. We're talking complaints and hearings.
Yeah.
In a hearing situation where a hearing officer has issued an order, it is our burden to ensure compliance with that order. If there is not compliance, we have certain actions that we can take, or the parent or other complainant can then file an appeal to district court.
What was that last thing?
If the parent or complainant is not the prevailing party and they feel that the district is not complying with the order, or that, again, that they're not the prevailing party, they can appeal to district court.
Okay. And is what you described as far as the department following up with the hearing officer's decision, making sure that it's implemented in the school or the district, is that in policy or is that just?
That is in law.
That's in law?
Yes, that's in federal IDEA.
Okay. All right.
More questions, Ms. Hunter? Ms. Rollins? Mr. Henderson? Mr. Bragg? Ms. Woods? I did have a question. I was surprised to hear there was no public comment. When was this rule first put out?
So the rule was put out in, I believe, October for public comment, and the public comment ended in November of 23, if I remember right.
Was it triggered by changes in federal law or just, or state law, or just a general update?
No, the rule change was necessitated by results of a monitoring by the federal Department of Education. They noticed a part of our rule that was not in compliance with IDEA and let us know, and so we ran a rule change to correct that.
Okay, and have they seen the new version?
Not yet. It hasn't been fully promulgated yet.
Okay, so once it's promulgated, then you go back to
Right.
make sure you're in compliance with federal law?
Right.
Okay. More questions? Okay, then the floor is open for a motion. This is final approval for the rules.
Final approval, yep.
Make a motion for final approval.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Henderson to approve the rules for special education and related services. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Bragg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a request for a waiver. Ms. James, will you be presenting? Okay, Ms. James will be coming up.
Could we take a short break before we begin this one?
We can, yeah.
Is that possible?
Ms. James, is that okay? Okay, let's do
5 or
10:35. We'll start back.
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready to get started. We got a few bonus minutes there. We are on action item number 4, request for a waiver. Ms. Saraceni.
Carly Saraceni, Assistant Commissioner, Educator Effectiveness and Licensure. Today, we have a waiver request by Joseph Smith and the Flippin School District. I'm going to let Ms. Whitney James go over our procedures, and then I'll come back up and give the opening.
Whitney James with the department. So for a licensure action hearing, Ms. Saraceni has introduced the item. We've already exchanged exhibits, and I believe that you have the exhibits packet that we sent to you. Each party will have the opportunity to present an opening statement of 5 minutes. I don't think that will probably even take that long. And then each party will have 15 minutes to present their cases, each starts with a division, but the opening statement and the presentation of the case, again, I don't think will take very much time on our side. But before that happens, we'll need the chair to please swear in everyone who is testifying, other than the attorneys. And then at the end of the educator's case, there's limited rebuttal. Again, I don't think we'll have any. And then at that time, if there are questions from the board, we can talk about that, and then the board can vote if there's a motion on the waiver.
Thank you, Ms. James. So at this point in time, anyone speaking on this that is not an attorney, please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you. Y'all might want to take a seat here in the front row. We'll start with a 5-minute opening statement by the department.
So I'm just going to give you a little bit of the facts. Mr. Smith, we received a true finding on DHS on 10/9/23. So when we talk about, if you can look at your exhibit, number 1 is kind of the timeline of events that occurred. Mr. Smith began working in the school district in September of 2021 as an IT assistant director. And when you're a classified employee, you do not have to go before the state board. It's the local board that they go before. The local board waived, accepted, and made a motion for a waiver for Mr. Smith to continue employment in a school district. Again, he was IT. He fit the bill for computer science. And so we fast forward to 23, and when the background check was redone for a licensed employee, because they would like for Mr. Smith to teach computer science, he passed the praxis. He was ready to go. So upon doing so, the background check again came back with the true finding with DHS, this time under the licensed personnel. That procedure is, it comes to you, state board, to either grant or deny the waiver for Mr. Smith to continue employment in the Flippin School District. And so at this time, we have spoken with Mr. Keys, legal for the district, several times. He is currently appealing the waiver. I know a lot of you have heard these waivers before. Sometimes it can take up to 2 years for a waiver with DHS. It's a very slow process. So I want to just try to give you enough information that's kind of in the packet but not in the packet. So, any questions for me?
I did. I just wanted to confirm, you were actually able to receive the report, correct?
Yes,
this time,
ma'am.
which I think this is one of the first ones we've ever gotten.
Well, guess what? I listened to what you said, and guess what? I
Came
did.
here. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I wanted you to have all the information because I know that was one of your concerns in the past. And so we are working diligently. Miss Clara, who is our background check coordinator, and Miss James, our attorney, we're working really hard to get you all the information because I know in the past you felt like you've not had the whole story, and I feel this time you had the whole story to make your recommendation. So at this time, I will turn it over.
Thank you, Ms. Ernestine. Thank you, members of the board. I'm Cody Keys, representing the district, and I have the pleasure to represent the employee. I have done this before, and in past instances, I kept it brief and you had questions. I just want to hit a couple of high points. Mr. Smith is currently employed with the district in a classified position. He has passed the praxis and taken all steps necessary to be a certified teacher, and he has an offer of employment. The superintendent will be utilizing him in a
Mr. Keys, if you could pull the microphone up.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore, or Dr. Moore. So pending approval from the board, he will be utilized in the role of a certified employee for computer technology. He has the support of his superintendent. He has the support of his principal. He's taken all other actions to receive his license. We had attempted to resolve this with DHS, but unfortunately, pending timelines, we weren't able to get the appeal. We're still in that process. It's nothing more than a technical matter. We just weren't able to get that done, and we'd like to have it resolved by the board. I do know that there may be some questions about the facts, so I was going to have him just present the facts as they were in February of 2000. It was 3 years ago, so February of 2021, if that would be the pleasure of the board, and then make him available for any additional questions. Since that time, he's taken a gun. It did involve the misfiring of a weapon in his home where his child was in the home. This was in Harrison, Arkansas, and so it involved the misfiring of a gun in the presence of a minor, and then that led to a finding of child endangerment. He's since taken a gun safety class, and he's taken a child maltreatment class, which I provided to the board. And so the pleasure of the board, if you'd like to hear from him as to the incident, I'd make him available at this time, and then really stand ready to answer any questions that you might have and make the superintendent and principal available as well. Okay? All right.
I want to check real quickly. Do the department want to come back for their 15-minute opening, or should we just go ahead and move into the? Okay. Okay, and then, but we'll be able to come back to answer questions from the department later. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Smith, if you would tell the board in your own words what happened in February of 2021 regarding gun misfiring in your apartment.
Yes, sir. My name is Joseph Smith.
If you don't mind moving forward to the microphone, I'm sorry.
Is that better?
You. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Joseph Smith. We had just, my wife, my 12-year-old son at the time, we had just gotten back from an aquarium trip, got back to my house. I had a gun laying on my desk that I had gotten from my father's estate. My dad had passed away. My stepmother was living there. The house had fallen into very much disrepair, and so we moved her out. And in the midst of cleaning everything out, brought the gun over. It was old, was going to clean it, had it sitting on my desk. I didn't really think about it. We didn't really have any loaded guns in the house as a kid, and I didn't take the forethought to check it. I was sitting at my desk, my wife was sitting on the couch, my son was sitting on the floor playing Legos. I bumped my desk swiveling around or something, knocked the gun off. The gun fell onto the floor, went off, and went through the floor into the neighbor's apartment downstairs. Very loud sound. Made sure my wife, my son, and everybody was okay. Went downstairs to check on my neighbor. She wasn't in the living room. This was 11 o'clock at night. Scared her, made sure she was okay at that time. She didn't say that we didn't know what had been damaged or anything had been done. I didn't even know it had gone through the floor. She had just heard the loud bang. Went back upstairs, made sure everybody was okay up there. My wife and my son left, went to go back to my wife's house, or our house. And my neighbor called, said she found a bullet on the floor, went downstairs, had gone through the ceiling, through her coffee table, and there was parts of a bullet on the floor. I apologized to her, made sure that she was still okay and everything like that. Went back upstairs to talk to my wife and my son. They decided to go home because it was 11 o'clock at night, a lot of things had happened. Yeah, let's just close out the night and go home. And shortly after they had left, the gun was still in the home, still in my apartment. I decided it was probably a better idea to take it and store it. And in that, the downstairs neighbor had called the police. They called me. And in the midst of driving out there, then turning around and driving back, they talked to me that evening, told me to be more responsible with the gun, and left it with me, and that was the end of that night.
Thank you. Any additional comments at this point by your group? Thank you for sharing.
And if the board wants testimony, it would only be from the superintendent and principal to confirm that he has employment. He's currently employed, and I think that's in the statement. So
Okay.
if those are in the record, I'll save you the time of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Board members, questions? We'll start with Ms. Keener down here. Mr. Wood?
Not right now.
Okay. Ms. Hunter?
I have questions, but I'm trying to get them well formulated. I guess I just make this comment. There just seems to be a lot of inconsistencies in the documentation that was provided. And that is concerning to me. And I don't know if you are aware of any of the inconsistencies, and if you want to speak to any of them. That's not a question, really. But,
What inconsistencies?
well, I mean,
This is, to be honest, whenever I received the true finding and everything like that, and finally got with DHS to get their report and to get the police report and everything like that with it, that's the first time I'd ever seen that report.
okay.
So there was a lot of things that were in there that that doesn't match up with the go of events that I have for that night, or that were in my statement that I gave the police that night.
Okay, so it said that you, I think, told your neighbor that there were fireworks that went off.
No.
Is that not true?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
And I never told the officers that either, so.
Okay.
Anything that they asked, as soon as they asked, this was what happened, who was there, yeah.
Okay, and then there was also, I'm not sure who this is from, but it said that whenever, like later that night, whenever you, I guess, talked with the police officer, that he asked you if there was a rifle in your vehicle and if it was unloaded, and that you said yes, that you had checked it 3 times to make sure it was unloaded, and then he racked back the slide, which ejected a .22 caliber round from the chamber.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that true?
Yes. Well, I don't know how many times I told him that I had checked it, but whenever it went off, I pulled the
You don't have to
the
use
loading
words.
tube.
I
Yeah.
don't even know what it is either. I mean, whatever.
I pulled the loading tube out from the bottom just to dump it out and make sure nothing else was in there. As far as I could tell, nothing else was in there. Put the rod back in and put it into the trunk of my car. Well, it was a Jeep, but yeah, in the back of the Jeep.
Okay. All right. And had you taken gun safety before this incident? I know you have since.
I had taken hunter's ed as a kid,
Okay.
but prior to that, no, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Rollins, questions?
I think I'd like to know, how many guns do you have? And where have you secured them at this point?
Oh, very much so. Every gun in the house, we've got 2 22s and there's a shotgun in the home, but none of them have ammo anywhere near them. They are stored very separately, and every gun has a safety flag that's in it, that is inserted in it, that you have to remove before anything can get loaded or it become a usable weapon.
Did you learn that through gun
Yes.
safety? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
She said, where did you learn that?
Oh, where did, the gun safety course, so DHS wanted me to take a gun safety and hard target course. So I did take that course and have been doing my own research, reading best practices, finding ways to make it safe but still be usable. So,
Has your son gone through any safety courses?
not yet, no ma'am. He
Questions,
doesn't.
Mr. Henderson? Mr. Bragg? Ms. Woods?
So is it practice, and I don't know if this is a question for you or for Mr. Keys, is it typical procedure that once a police report is taken, they turn it over to DHS? Are you aware?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
When I participate in DHS appeals, it may or may not have a police report.
Okay.
We just didn't see this one because he didn't have notice before DHS made a finding.
Okay.
And that's why we had to go on the back end and ask for the hearing that hasn't been scheduled.
I just have a real problem with them making findings without an interview.
Agreed.
So, okay.
So you've not had a hearing with them? I mean, so like you believe that this true finding will then be undone?
I do, but I'm not optimistic that that would happen really timely because we've had a lot of technical issues getting that appeal hearing set. And since he has employment and the district wants to hire him in the certified capacity, and I've been before this board before, I thought this would be the better move. But that, even if we didn't have this option, we would still pursue the DHS option to have the true finding removed, which would, this would be a nullity at that point.
Exactly. Thank you.
Ms. Woods, more questions?
No.
Ms. Salam? Okay. Remember the floor is open also for questions from the agency. If anyone has any questions.
I think I have a
Ms. Ryan?
technical question. If we were to grant this waiver, would this come back up again if it's not off the DHS record? How often do they go for a background check?
Every 5 years.
Okay.
And so this one was in October of '23, so we would have another background check completed in 5 years, in 2028. And that's whether he's a classified employee or a licensed, that we have background checks on a rotation every 5 years, either renewing a license or you're on a rotation as a classified employee as well.
So
Ms. Hunter?
how long is this waiver request for? Is it like permanently?
When you waive this, when it's waived, as long as it's on, comes back, this particular item, it will be waived. We put it in our system, but it's specifically for this. If another true finding were to happen or something in a background check on FBI or state police were to come up, it would not be waived. It's on this particular item. And remember, in the past, you know, some appeals have taken more than a year.
I think that's what bothers me the most, is that, like, these are not aligned, we've talked about alignment a lot today.
Yes. I mean, again, that's DHS and their system and their processes.
I guess my, like, if, let's say it's a year and a half before DHS gets to this, and then it remains a true finding. I mean, that would bother me if we gave this waiver, today, because they found something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we've granted waivers where we have the waiver until such time that hearing comes, and if it were to come back positive, then we had a condition on the motion that would trigger them to be back in front of the board.
Yes,
That's correct.
that
yeah.
is correct.
This is actually probably more information than we've ever had from DHS at this point in time on anything I've seen. And so we put that condition in before. Mr. Wood?
I have some questions for Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
What was said about fireworks on the night of the incident occurring?
The closest thing that I could think of is whenever I went downstairs to check to make sure that she was okay because of the gun going off. She said it was a loud bang, like a firework, she said there's a loud ringing, like a firework had gone off.
That's all?
That's, yes, sir. And again, that was just from what her and I had a conversation.
How many times did you go down to your neighbor's apartment?
Twice, I believe.
Why did you go down there the first time?
Because the gun had gone off, and she would normally bang on the floor whenever my kids would come over, and this was late at night. A gun did go off, and I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay. And then once I got back upstairs, talking to my wife, she had called me on my phone and told me what she had found, and that there was a hole in her coffee table, and that I needed to come downstairs.
Mr. Smith, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm having a hard time with this, not because of the incident that occurred that night with regard to the gunshot. I have a general personal philosophy or whatever about these types of appeals, that if you're on the child maltreatment registry, that's a disqualification for teaching. And I was going to stick to that pretty hard until your case came along. And then I was pretty compelled by the fact that someone could almost accidentally end up on the child maltreatment registry. And I had some feelings towards when an act occurs that is an accident and you find yourself accused of negligence and on there, that is different than a purposeful act where someone has an inappropriate relationship with
Yes,
a
sir.
child, or pours boiling hot water on a child, that are over disciplines. Those are very different situations, and yours is one of negligence.
Yes, sir.
My problem today is that I, lack of a better way to say it, I don't believe you, because your stories are very inconsistent, and your explanation today is inconsistent with almost every report in here from everyone involved in the incident, including the children that were in the room at the time that talked about fireworks was discussed in your living room. And your neighbor only reports one time of you coming to her apartment, and that was to apologize for the noise, and that it wasn't until she showed you the holes in the ceiling and the coffee table and the floor did you have any response about a gun going off. And you continued. Your story today doesn't seem to own up to what occurred that night, and you're essentially saying that all of these people, including police officers that were involved in investigating this, that they're all just putting these falsehoods in here, and this isn't true. And that gives me a lot of trouble to support your waiver request.
I'm sorry, sir. It's the best recollection of that night. There are parts of that night that I don't forget, that I do very much think about, and I am very thankful and very, very, very glad that nobody was hurt that night.
Of course.
I regret not double checking, triple checking, and or not having done more due diligence in the safety of that firearm in the first place.
Again, my concern is not about that. My concern is about honesty, and I gather from what I read in reports of police officers, your neighbor's statement, your child's statement, your, I believe, wife's statement, all to police officers are inconsistent with what you're telling us today, and that gives me a lot of concern. And I think for that reason, I would vote no.
Is there any of those inconsistencies that, what inconsistencies, or what parts?
It's just that you don't have a straight story. You don't have a story consistent with what anybody else said. It sounds to me as though your child said, let me read in here, stated that his dad's neighbor is mean, so they were just going to say that it was a firework. That was going to be the story. Joseph stated to me he was in his room when he heard a loud bang. Having fireworks in the living room, the kids stated they set off a firework. Joseph then went to apartment C to apologize for the noise. But the neighbor showed Joseph the hole in the ceiling. He went back to his apartment and confronted the kids. It's inconsistent with what you're telling us here today. I'm not sure it merits much more of an argument between me and you about it, but that's why I'll vote to deny the waiver request.
Okay, Mr. Wood, any more questions or comments? Ms. Keener? Mr. Henderson? Mr. Bragg? Ms. Woods?
I don't think I have any questions, no. I think I do have one more question to follow up. With Mr. Woods, there was something that's been bothering me in reading this, an inconsistency, and I don't think it would be fair to you if I didn't ask. And in one of the reports, it mentions that you stated you were in a different room. Can you talk about that?
I was sitting in the living room. Well, it's a small apartment. I was sitting in the living room at my computer desk. My wife and my son were on, well, my wife was sitting on the couch, and her and I were talking, and my son was sitting on the floor playing with Legos at the time. And it was just the three of us in the house.
So there's a report here that says that you stated you were in your room and you heard the loud bang, which to me is not the same as I knocked it off the table. And so,
Yes, ma'am.
if you'll clarify, you were in the same room as the child, in the same room as the gun,
Yes.
and you knocked it off the table.
Yes.
And then heard the loud bang. Okay. So, yeah. I guess in this first report, it appears as if you say you were in your room and you went back to confront the children, as if when the two children told you it fell off the room, it fell off the table, indicating that you were not in the room and you confronted them asking what happened. And so that was concerning to me, that in this, I guess this report would have been, the interview was in 2021, that it seems in this one you're passing the blame to the children, and that was, if that's not what happened.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, that's.
No, and I have two children, but I only had one of my children at home with me.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I guess the report, and I imagine you're feeling the exact same frustration, that the report doesn't match what you said that night, what happened that night, and
Right,
so
and
it's hard for us.
This is the first, so whenever I sent a request for information to DHS, this is the first time that I personally have ever
Yeah.
seen this report. The first time I sent the request to DHS, they sent me back a message going, "You're not on the list, we don't know what you want."
Yeah.
And then the second time, it took a bit of calling around to figuring out who I needed to get in contact with, and to actually get this report. And so whenever I received this report, this was the first time that I'd ever seen all of the report, or been able to address anything or look at it and go, why is this like this? Because there's some parts about it that I don't understand why my neighbor would say that. And as for the rest of it, it was, like I said, I hadn't gotten to actually look at it, so.
Well, and one thing that does, oh, sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
Well, one
Sorry.
thing that speaks volumes to me right now that I do want to just acknowledge, that Mr. Hudson and Mr. Horn came down here, that, they know, correct, that's, I haven't met you guys, but that's huge to me, because they know you in the past few years that you've worked there. That speaks to, how much they value as an employee, as an educator. So I just wanted to say that too. So I do appreciate you coming down. Thank you for that.
Mr. Smith, I do have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's your wife's statement. She talks about that you paid your fines and should be done with court. What were you charged with?
Say that again?
So, I think it's your wife's statement. It says, Miss name was blanked out.
Mhm.
Mr. Smith has paid his fines and should be done with court. Were you actually charged with something?
Negligent discharge of a firearm within city limits.
Okay, and so you paid a fine? I
Yes.
assume? Okay.
Did you read the police report as a part of preparing for your whatever? Did you ever read the police report on this incident?
Whenever I received it, yes.
When did you receive it?
I don't remember the date.
More than a year ago?
No.
Did you
No.
receive it before you received it from the,
Just a few months ago.
when you got a report from DHS?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the
Yeah,
fir-
yes, sir. Sorry.
That was the first time you read what the police wrote up about the incident?
Yes, sir.
Do we have the police report?
I don't know that
Is
we have a police.
yeah, okay.
But there clearly is one
Yeah, that.
from this record.
So have you received the police report or did you receive the DHS report?
That is, from the best that I can tell, that's both.
Okay.
The DHS report cites the police report over and over again.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I just want to clarify something, because there's a lot of this statement or that statement, okay? And whether or not you're taking responsibility, okay?
ma'am.
So were you irresponsible with a gun in your house with
Yes,
kids?
ma'am. I was.
You were. And that's your responsibility and nobody else's.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the district have concerns about the integrity or interaction with students currently in your district, superintendent or principal?
If you don't mind, come to the mic and introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Kelvin Hudson, I'm the superintendent of Flippin. I requested the police report, that's the reasoning that it's been brought to light and that he's now seen it.
Can you move your microphone?
Move the mic, Ron. Thank you.
Like that, sorry. I have hearing aids, so I don't always hear what you're asking me to do, so. You know, we hired Eli, as a assistant tech director. It's been 3 or 4 years ago now, I don't know the exact time. His integrity has been excellent in that time. I cannot speak to what obviously was said that night and what went into the police report. He and I have had those conversations as well, that they don't match. But I have my experience with him has been that he's always been truthful with me, to the best of my knowledge. We asked him 2 years ago to be a computer science teacher. The teacher pay wasn't to the point where that was a benefit to him, and he chose not to do it, but we knew that he had a relationship with our students. He has students work with him in the summer on our technology, and we had seen that if we could get him in the classroom, we felt like we could grow our computer science program. So we hired him this year, sent him to the CTE class to get his license. He also took the practice to get his license, and then when we filed that paperwork, then the true finding came back. So we started investigating at that point, trying to figure out what was going on. And
So if this board today doesn't grant this waiver, will he remain in your district as a classified employee, IT staff, still doing the same job, interacting with students and being around on your campus?
he will.
Because your local board is gonna waive it.
Local board has already waived it.
Okay, so today the decision is whether or not he will be granted a license and be
To
allowed to
teach.
teach.
Yes.
Board members, questions or comments?
Yes, for the position that I have available. We have tried, we've sent a math teacher to through the CTE program to try and develop a computer science program. It did not grow, the program didn't. We've tried virtual, we've tried digital, and this is the first time that and Mr. Horn can speak to that, but it's the first time that we've seen some excitement in that program. And we've also started a after-school virtual program through the AAA of Arkansas. The name leaves me right now. Esports program. And so we're seeing some excitement in the area of technology, which is exciting to us. So that's why I'm here in support today.
I don't want my comments to be taken as, I don't think this is serious, because I do think it's serious. I think there are gun people, and I think there are people that are not gun people. I happen to not be a gun person. I don't know a whole lot about guns. However, this could have gone so many ways. So I think that night in itself, you probably learned more lessons than anything this board or anybody can say to you today, right? I do agree with what you said, Mr. Wood, about we have seen cases in here with inappropriateness, alcoholism, drugs. Like this today didn't have anything to do with that. It is literally in your home, personal responsibility. That could have been tragic. Thank God it wasn't. Whether or not that night fireworks were talked about or not, I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know if I believe it 100%. Okay, but I did hear you today say that you were the one that was responsible, and that you did not take appropriate whatever with the gun, right? That's clear, and I hope the lesson from that has been learned.
I do appreciate all of your reference letters. You've got quite a few, and several of them are very impressive to me, and that you have a special connection with your students. I think that's very important. Were you as high school principal? Do you want to speak to us? I know you came today, and
if you don't
we'd love to
mind
hear from you.
introducing yourself in the microphone, thank you.
My name is Dale Horn. I'm the high school principal. I have no trouble speaking in public, but I had back surgery 8 weeks ago, and sometimes I just start crying. So if that happens, it's not that that's emotional, it's just a back issue. I'd like to briefly just speak about two things. I think it was Ms. Hunter used the word value a while ago. What value do you bring? I think it was you. I'd like to give you two areas that Mr. Smith brings value. As Mr. Hudson stated, we've not been able to find a computer science teacher. 4 years ago, we had a math teacher. We tried to make that work. He couldn't pass the praxis. So then we moved and had my business ed teacher teach computer science. He's a lot better business ed teacher than he is a computer science teacher. So we didn't gather a lot of excitement. Then we did virtual, and we had no excitement with virtual. And then we brought in Mr. Smith. And we've had a lot of interest in the program, and I think it's because of him and his heart for kids. The other thing I want to share is when I arrived at Flippin 5.5 years ago, I came from a private school, 23-year background. My first year at Flippin, I was pitiful. I'd never dealt with a third of my kids being raised by their grandparents. Fourth of my kids that come to my office either have a parent or a grandparent in jail or prison. We had homelessness. I was pitiful. I probably graded out at about a D- that year. And since that time, I've worked hard to meet the needs of those kids. Mr. Smith has a different background than I have, and he's made connections with kids that I've never connected with. He's got kids that just can't wait to get out to his class. He's got kids that share what's going on with their lives that they've never shared with me because I can't relate to them. So academically, I'd ask for you to consider this waiver. We have a phrase we use at Flippin High School. We inform our high school kids 280 at a time. We educate them 20 to 25 at a time. But we make a difference. One at a time. Mr. Smith is making that difference for kids that I've been able to connect to. I'm sorry. It's my back. Do y'all have any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Board members, questions?
Thank you all very
Questions?
much.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments, or open the floor for a motion?
Ms. Saraceni, can you talk to us a little bit about the training, the teacher development training that a new teacher goes through? He's passed the praxis, and I know there's training that also goes along with that for a new teacher.
Yes, we actually support and mentor the first 3 years. It's kind of a gradual release. Year one, we have mentors, and it's all through our co-op. It's pushed out through our co-ops, and y'all are members of OUR. I have to kind of put myself across the state. I didn't want to state the wrong one. They have a great program there, and we support them not only their first year, but their second year and third year. We do, they kind of do a needs assessment of the ones coming in so that we provide, some may need classroom management, some may need training on our evaluation system tests, or they may need, depending if it's K through 6, it may be RISE training. It just depends on what they need. And so we try to meet the needs. We just don't have a blanket of this is what we provide. We actually, each co-op will do a needs assessment, and then they build a mentoring plan after our mentoring specialists go out to the individual buildings and meet with the principals and decide this is what I need for my particular school. So we do, it's as individualized as we can make it because it's a lot of needs out there, but they really do support them. And it is all 3 years, first, second, and third year. Again, your first year, they're out there and visiting you once a month. And then your second year, it kind of gradually release. And they do a lot of things in the summer. That's kind of that one-on-one teacher prep, all things you need to know.
If I could hear from Mr. Smith one more time.
Yes.
I've read your letters of recommendation. We've heard from the principal. How are you building relationships with your students?
I have 2 sons that are, one is 14, the other one is 16. They're at the end of this month. They're 2 years and 9 days apart. So I'm about to have a 17 and a 15-year-old. I treat my students like I treat my kids, and vice versa. I want to find some way to connect to them. I want to know what's going on in their life without being the weird, buggy teacher. But whenever I hear stuff that's kind of concerning or, something like that, I ask questions. My youngest is ADHD and possibly autistic on the spectrum somewhere. And he's a completely different creature than my oldest. My oldest is rather rebellious. He lives with his mother. But he and I connect and get along just fine. He talks to me. He finding something in common with somebody isn't as hard as some people might think. And finding stuff in common with my students is finding stuff in common with my kids. I want a better future for them than what I had. I want to be a teacher that I didn't have, or be a teacher that I needed. And I've got a few great examples of those. And how those teachers and those principals growing up impacted my life, I want to give that back. Because there's so many kids that just kind of slip through because of one reason or another. They're not athletic, or they're not in this club, that club, or anything like that. All the kids are welcome in my classroom. It's one of the things I liked about esports. Esports, I've got kids that are playing basketball, kids that are more nerdy, kids that are more books, kids that are outdoorsy, or cars, or ag, or anything like that. And they want to come together to play video games, which is awesome in of its own, but it bridges connections with them, and I want to foster those connections so that I don't have kids that are left out, that fall through, that don't have somebody that's there for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Ms. James, if you would remind us what a motion look like here. Do we have to take multiple motions? We haven't done a licensure case in a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, someone could make a motion to either grant or deny the waiver.
Okay.
I don't know if there would be any conditions attached to that waiver. That would be up to the board.
Okay, but it's just one motion that has to be made.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Comments or questions? Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Bragg to grant the waiver. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a second by Ms. Rollins. Is there any questions or comments before we take a vote?
So
Ms.
it
Hunter.
is it's a motion that is a complete waiver with no conditions on DHS.
I'm not aware of any conditions that need to be made.
Okay, so a motion to grant the waiver. Mr. Wood.
I have a comment to make. I'll try to keep it brief. I'm going to vote against the motion. I don't question any of my fellow board members who vote for it. I understand. My concerns, like I said earlier, are not about the events related to the discharge of the firearm that night. I believe that would be a situation that could be overlooked from someone in position of authority over a school district, and in our case, to make that decision. My concern is about the I'm going to call them the dishonest statements that were made during the investigation immediately after the incident occurred that involved DHS workers and police officers. I came in here today fully prepared to vote to grant the waiver. But I believe that his story today essentially denies that he was dishonest in the days following, in the hours following the incident. And that is very concerning to me. I believe that everyone is deserving of grace and forgiveness. I was willing to extend grace and forgiveness for the dishonesty that occurred 2 or 3 years ago. But I believe that by denying that there was a story made up, or that there was conspiracy with his children to make up a story, or the reasons for going to the neighbor's apartment, by denying that he made those things up that night, he is essentially being dishonest to us. And that is extremely frustrating and concerning to me, that all he had to do to come get my vote was just be honest today about what occurred back then. He has not convinced me that he is being honest about what happened then, and so I'll vote no.
Okay. Any more comments? So there's a motion on the floor to approve the waiver, and we'll do a roll call. Ms. Keener?
I wish you didn't start with me. Aye.
Mr. Wood?
No.
Ms. Hunter?
Yes.
Ms. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Bragg?
Yes.
Ms. Woods?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. So last on our agenda, thank you all for coming today. We'll give you a second to get out. State board committees, do one of y'all want to go first? And one of y'all want to, who wants to go first? Jeff? Okay. Next, last on our action agenda is a discussion of the formation of committees within our board. We looked at the bylaws and know that needs to be an action taken. So if, Jeff, do you want to go first or
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah,
And-
so
and-
my proposal is to create a committee on academic accountability. Last month, I passed out a handout, and I apologize, I didn't make a bunch more copies and bring again this month. But a committee that will meet to trying to figure out how to describe it. I described it well here. I don't want to just read it to you, but anyway, a committee that would limit its review to schools which received a D or F in the 2023 assessment, and to the school districts and the charter management organizations that have authority over each such school. That the committee would be empowered to compel reporting to the committee by any school which received a D or F in 2023, and to the school districts and charter management organizations that have authority over each such school. The committee would ensure that any reporting that it requires to the committee from any school district or charter management organization or individual school would not require duplicative information that is already reported to the ADE, that we would work to minimize that, but that we would work to identify any new information that we would be looking for. And that if necessary, we would require in-person testimony to the committee. Regarding the issues that contribute to the lack of achievement and or growth in the school or the district as a whole. I would propose that it be either a 3 or 5 person committee. I don't have feelings either way. I guess maybe I would lean towards 3, but I think 5 would be good too. Whatever would be more able to meet with a full committee as often as possible. That's what I would like to see.
And do you envision appointing non-board members on the committee, or
I
just
don't.
keeping
I
it-
actually
okay.
would envision this just being a committee of the board itself, that we would be very open and inviting to non-board members to be present, to answer questions about even interviewing successful schools and successful school districts about what is working, to interview the department about what their levels of accountability are over these schools and districts. What are we doing to help successful schools and districts meet and assist and bring along unsuccessful schools and districts? Also, to answer specific questions, I think having department staff available to answer questions related to data that they already have, or state averages or things like that, to help us keep things in context, I think would be important. But I really envision this being a committee made up entirely of the board.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Wood down here to my right? Questions?
So, how often do you expect this to meet?
My thought would be that this would be a once-a-month meeting, probably. I think that we should have a meeting before the next regular state board meeting to kind of let the committee set its own parameters and organize itself for what it wants to do as far as that goes. If it's available to meet maybe slightly more often than once a month, then so be it. But if once a month was what it needed to do, then that too. But kind of let the committee make its own decision on that.
Okay, so I think we can vote on them together. It says that we are to establish committee by majority vote, and then the board chair can delegate the power to the member to select the membership. So,
So
with
I
that,
make-
Ms. Keener, if you want to present your committee.
Oh, okay. Then yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm shocker. I'm very interested in digging into early learning, and I think that we're presented with a really unique opportunity here. You know, with the LEARNS Act shifted early childhood from the Department of Health over to our little world, and so I think we're in a unique spot. There's been a lot of work done, a lot of really strong work. In fact, you know, the history of sort of the governance of that department, there at one point was the Arkansas Early Childhood Commission that, in a similar way that we do now, oversaw that work. Years ago, that authority was stripped and they're more of an advisory board. They have been doing the work though. They have been, I think they even had a strategic plan moving forward. So I'm really excited to learn from them, to work with them, to sort of take the work that they've done and shift it in the light of outcomes based on what we now, the tasks that we've been given through Arkansas Learns. Just the basics, you know, the purpose of the committee is for the outcomes of the kids. What I'm really interested in looking at is the, you know, I think we've spoken about this before, but children will often spend 5 years under the care of licensed programs and still enter kindergarten not ready, and that disempowers our kindergarten teachers from doing what they're trained to do and what they want desperately to do. So that ultimately would be my goal, is getting that kindergarten readiness, ensuring that that's done throughout all programs, faith-based, private, family care, obviously our programs receiving child care assistance. And so, you know, with that purpose being in mind, I'm going to kind of go through here, make sure I don't forget anything. The membership also was kind of a no-brainer. It's written in LEARNS who the stakeholders are in the early learning space. So I want to use that as our basis. That includes programs that maybe we don't oversee, like Head Start, because they are licensed through our state and they have a lot of wonderful information to give. So I think we can learn from them and share and work in a partnership as opposed to just saying, oh, they're federal, we don't need to mess with them. So I definitely want to include Head Start programs, private child care providers, school-based pre-kindergarten providers, family with children receiving early care. Certainly that's important, the input from the families. Experts in early childhood and education, childhood care and education, experts in early literacy and early numeracy, business and industry representations, I think is a big one, and leadership from the Department of Ed. Thank heavens we have Ms. Tanya Williams, because all of the changes that have happened in the past 15, 20 years, she is the constant, she is the expert. So we're thrilled to engage with her and work together. And then any relevant advocacy organizations. So I foresee this being a little bit different than yours, that it maybe would include a single member of the board that I could serve as the facilitator to get that conversation going, and the liaison between the committee and yourselves, and kind of keep you up to date. I also see this as being a little different in that I think there would be an intense amount of work on the front end, gathering information, looking ahead, brainstorming that strategic planning, and then backing off to more of a reporting role and checking in after that plan has been finalized and put into place. So the time determination I think would be different. I also want to ensure that we're representing all areas of the state. So in a similar way, if you would be willing to delegate that power to me to appoint the members, I will keep you guys up to date as it goes on. And I have a similar report, and I realize as I'm sitting here that I've shared it with Ms. Williams and people at the department, but not with my fellow board members, so I'll be sure to get you guys a copy.
Thank you, Ms. Gaynor. Questions down to my right?
Will you take recommendations for people to serve on your
Oh,
committee?
we'd love
'Cause I have somebody that I think you should
Yes,
talk to.
that's perfect. And that's, in fact, I have people in mind that I have not put out, publicly, but there are areas of the state that I still don't have represented. So I definitely want recommendations. In fact, throw them my way. I'm going to demand that of you. So thanks.
Mr. Bryan, Ms. Henderson, questions? Questions? Okay, so what it says in our procedures is that we would vote to establish the committee. And then as chair, I have the ability to delegate the authority to the board member who's over the committee to select the membership of the committee. So at this point in time, any more questions, thoughts, reflections, or a motion, we can, I would say, just go ahead and take them together to approve or deny the formation of these committees.
So I'll make the motion
To establish
the committees as
academic
described.
accountability committee and an early learning committee.
Yes.
I think did I help you? Yeah. So there's a motion to establish an academic accountability committee and an early learning committee by Ms. Hunter. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Henderson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. I will then delegate the authority to Mr. Wood as chair of the Academic Accountability Committee to comprise the membership, and to Ms. Keener as chair of the Early Learning Committee to comprise your membership. And with that, that is the end of our action agenda item. We will move on to any new business,
Thank you, guys.
and then we'll move on to the consent agenda then. Are there any, I know that we need to pull consent agenda item 1, the minutes, to reflect a change. Are there any other items that board members would like to pull from the consent agenda to hear? I would like to discuss action item number 4. Okay, so, but we'll start with number 1. Number 1, the minutes. We have reflected on the minutes that need to be changed, that Ms. Hunter unfortunately had to leave the last meeting, and so the minutes on our agenda right now say that, you know, votes were unanimous. However, Ms. Hunter had to leave at one point in the meeting, and so the new minutes will reflect that point in time in which she left. Do we need to have a motion separate for that? I'm looking for an attorney. Okay. Or can we say in the motion amended as allowed in the minutes? Okay. I did want to look at consideration of the PLSB case. And honestly, I circled this as to whether I would think about it or not. But in light of the hearing we had today, to me, the licensure case we heard today is separate from the PLSB. PLSB cases are those that are currently employed in a district and, you know, face a violation. We hear in the end of those cases, and occasionally it's hard to sort of stomach the violation that has been given. I'm not going to pull this for a hearing. I just want to flag it to our attention. This is a case where a pretty major violation occurred for a teacher, and they're only receiving 6 months suspension. There is requirements that they undergo treatment. And so, Ms. James, if you could talk a little bit about like when that person submits their treatment, do you all look at that? If it doesn't fulfill the duties, do you go back to work with them? What does that look like?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Whitney James with the department. Whenever an educator is required to complete a drug treatment or alcohol treatment program as part of their sanction for an ethics violation, they have to submit the proof or quarterly reports or whatever it may be. And that is actually taken back to the ethics subcommittee to review and approve.
Okay, so the ethics subcommittee looks at that. So,
Yes.
Okay.
And yes.
Do they pull in the educator if there's questions or concerns, or they feel like, you know, rehabilitation has not occurred?
Well, no, they normally don't pull in an educator, but they would say we don't accept this. Same with the written reflections. But this person their license could be suspended indefinitely until all of those conditions are met.
Okay.
So even if the time has lapsed, if all of the conditions of the suspension are not met, they remain on suspension.
Okay. I've had a long-standing issue. I certainly know there is room and importance of rehabilitation for people, but there are times when I don't understand why these aren't criminal charges when people are under substance abuse at school, and they go home. And so I know that you don't have the answer to that fully, but I just want the assurance that this incident cannot happen again, and a 6-month suspension does not seem a long enough time there.
Right, and I can answer more questions when we're not on the record
Yeah.
about the reasoning for the 6-month suspension and why it's not longer.
Yeah.
But
Do you feel confident in the PLSB decision in that sense?
I
Yeah.
don't get to make the decisions, but it
Fair.
did, this case did go to the ethics subcommittee
Okay.
and an evidentiary hearing.
Okay.
And that's a completely different panel of educators who reviewed it and upheld it. So it's been through,
Okay.
it's been through 2 different levels. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
That is helpful. Again, I'm not going to pull it at this point, but I did want to discuss those things.
Yes, ma'am. I can talk to you on break or answer any other questions about
Yeah.
this one.
I just think as we as a board are the final decision
Yes,
for licensure cases and PLSB cases, we want to take into account the severity of issues that occur.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know in this case, we place a lot of trust on those 2 committees.
Yes,
And,
ma'am. And I can
know
also
they
talk
do
to
great
you.
work and know that they are volunteering for a very hard job. But know that, we want to ensure that our students are all in the best situations with teachers.
Yes, ma'am. And I can also talk to you, like I said, a little bit more on break about the additional facts of this one.
I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
technical question on one of ours today as well. This individual failed to respond to the recommendations,
Yes, ma'am.
very defiant, rejected the initial determination and recommendations. What happens with this individual? At this point, they're on I think a 1-year suspension.
Yes, ma'am. Is this
Number 5.
Cooper?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what your question is one more time? I'm so sorry.
When they're so defiant with the committee and the recommendations, what happens then? I mean, they're on the suspension, but if they continue to be defiant with that attitude that they're not in the wrong, what happens?
Typically, if there were another ethics violation, say the person went back into the classroom after the suspension, if there were another ethics violation, typically the sanction goes up. But is your question regarding what happens whenever the 14 days runs to respond, or?
No, no, because then if they don't respond, then they're, permanently suspended?
If they do not respond to the recommendation of the ethics subcommittee, or if they have a hearing and they don't respond to that within 14 days, we send those recommendations out by secured server so we can see when someone opens them, or we send them by certified mail. So that's when the 14 days starts to run. And quite frankly, a lot of people don't respond because they don't want to accept the recommendation, so they kind of accept by default. But it does function as an acceptance, and they are informed that, you will be on the state board agenda on this day. They are sent a copy of the order, and they know that they are going to be, in this case, suspended as long as the state board accepts the recommendation. And that does go in our educator licensure system. So if anyone were to look up this educator's name, they would see that there's a suspension there. So she's made aware. Everyone is. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions on any other consent agenda items?
So,
Ms. Hunter?
yeah, I have a question about the Lee County report.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Oh,
That's not
sorry.
consent.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not consent.
those are reports.
Oh, well, then I'll save it for when we get there.
Yeah, so we
Thank
are
you.
looking at consent agenda,
Sorry.
which is items 7, 1 through 17. Mr. Henderson and Mr. Bragg, questions? Ms. Salon, Ms. Woods? Okay. Any more questions on consent agenda items? Does anyone need another minute to look at those? Okay, with that, then we will need a motion to accept the amended minutes that reflects Ms. Hunter's departure from the meeting.
I'll move to approve.
There's a motion by Ms. Woods to approve the consent agenda reflecting in the minutes Ms. Hunter's Is there a second? A second by Mr. Henderson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, with that, it is 11. Do we want to just keep going and finish? Yeah. What is the pleasure of the board? Do we want to take a break for lunch? Do we want to keep going to reports?
Lunch is here. Is it getting cold?
Yeah, what is it? No. We have the school district reports from Ms. Whitlow, and agency reports. Anyone feel strongly?
Do we
I
have
don't
some
know.
people here that are gonna report?
You all are here for the consent agenda, correct? Yeah. So you're free. Thank you.
So really it's just, I guess, the 5 reports, is that it? And then any board reports?
Yes. And so, Ms. Whitlow, you're ready? Well, I say we do it, but
Yeah,
I
let's
don't
chug
know.
along.
I'm always hungry, so you could convince someone, convince me either way.
Go either way.
Okay.
You
We'll
are
do it.
hungry?
We'll have Ms. Whitlow.
Yes.
Good, are we still in the morning?
Yeah.
Yes.
10 more
Good
minutes, you're
morning.
good to go.
Sheila Whitlow, Associate Deputy Commissioner and Director of Office of Coordinated Support and Service. So I have presented with you the reports for the districts that are receiving level 5 support, as well as reports that came to us from Pine Bluff School District, Marvel Lane. I also have here today on Zoom the superintendent and assistant superintendent of Watson Chapel, and they'll be joining us if you have any questions, but I do have a report for you about Watson Chapel as well.
So I know Ms. Hunter had a question about the Lee County report, so let me make sure that she clarifies with
Okay.
whatever you want for Lee County.
It's now.
Yeah, because she's not gonna do a presentation over
Right,
this
just
district.
take questions.
But she is going to do she's gonna go in deeper to Watson Chapel.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
So, I think it bothered me a little bit as I was reading the academics for Lee County. There was the second paragraph of the academics section where it talks about the Lee High School and their significant hurdles this quarter.
Right.
You know, they've been at level 5 for, well, since 2019, is that right?
Yes.
So I guess I would have expected that things like chain of command, discipline protocols, things of that nature, that those would have been like in their rearview mirror, for lack of a better word.
Correct.
So, I mean, and so now, if they came into their situation in 2019, then they are approaching 5 years,
So,
right? Am I
Do you want to explain the timeline?
anytime I've
And then I'll speak to that if you want to address
Yeah,
this timeline
you can-
first.
I'm just concerned about their.
So, one of the biggest, no, what you're saying, we agree. One of the biggest challenges, with some of our districts in the state authority, and even throughout the Delta region especially, is turnover of leadership. So we've had 3 superintendents with Lee County, during this time period. We've had 3 changes of high school principal, 5
Actually,
changes.
5 changes of high school principals.
5 changes in the high school principal. So establishing consistent leadership, you know, and the previous high school principal, you know, a lot of capacity building in him. He's doing he did a fabulous job. And guess what? He got snatched up by a district in Central Arkansas, and he came back home, and he's doing great things there. And I'm happy for him. He's doing great things. But then we've got to start over again with new leadership within the district. A lot of times it's how can you grow your own, hire people who are from the area so that they're not going to leave you again, right, and stay within that district. So those are unique challenges that we face over and over and over again, and we see that.
Right.
Timelines-wise, on their 5 years, we were talking about Lee County's interesting because they started off under standards for accreditation violations, and that's where authority was assumed.
Mhm.
They weren't placed under level 5 support until a couple of years later. So their 5-year timeline is coming up, I believe, at the end of
it's-
next year. or the year after?
No, it's actually, they're April, May. Let me
next
pull it up. I
spring.
have those dates written down
Next
for all
spring,
of
right?
them. It's the 2026, it's 2026.
We had planned to ask Dr. Stone.
May 13, 2026.
We had planned to ask Dr. Stone, just as Dr. McGee came and presented last month on Helena, West Helena, we planned to ask Dr. Stone to come either in February or March to do a same presentation. And then I know we've got a couple of visits where folks are going to try to go out there and see the school.
Right.
And so that will kind of give us some updates and start that conversation of, is it time to start talking about the limited authority board there and what does that look like? The academics still, the elementary, I think, is doing pretty well at Lee. At Lee. The high school, they were struggling again. I did a walkthrough not long ago, had a pretty direct conversation afterwards with the superintendent about, okay, where have we made progress and now we've kind of seemed to slide back. What is the support you need? We've ramped up our support under Ms. Whitlow and the support that we're providing directly to the high school because we can't drop the ball, right? But again, any district that's under state authority, every one of them is a challenge. We try not to sugarcoat our reports to be like everything's going great. We try to tell you what really is happening. So, you know, I wish I could say it's beautiful, but there's struggles and they're working on them. But we want you to be aware that it's not perfect. But when you have 5 turnovers of high school principals and superintendent changes, that's a struggle. And so building that consistent support is a constant challenge.
So,
And-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, you go ahead and then I wanted to add some about that and the recognition that we did start to see that trajectory was changing with the change in building leadership and had the meeting with the superintendent, with the instructional support staff. And so our team is working very closely with them. We meet with him monthly to provide input about what's happening within the district or within the school. And we've really doubled down on consistency. One of my state leadership coaches spent several weeks just there. He also works at Helena, but we had him there for a few weeks in a row just to work directly with that building principal and help build his capacity. This is his first year as a building principal.
And I do want to say that this is an experienced educator, someone who has military experience. I mean, he's a seasoned adult, but first time being an administrator.
Right. So he's just learning the nuts and bolts of being a principal. And so we have someone there now, our state leadership coach, that's working closely with him on that, along with Dr. Stone, who has experience as a principal, and he's in those buildings as well. Oftentimes when I'm there, he's either there or has been there.
So what is the teacher turnover rate? You talked about leadership turnover, and I understand that. Is it just as dramatic?
It has not been as bad. I would say the last 2 years have been better. Definitely at the elementary, we've seen less turnover. We had more turnover last year at the high school. That's probably not as stable as it is at the elementary school. But yeah, we do experience turnover in all of the districts that we work with.
Sure. Well, I mean, and to me, things like chain of command and discipline protocols, I mean, that's not, I mean, it is leadership, obviously, but you think that if there's some stability in the teacher population, that things like that don't slip. I mean, like they know those things.
No, you're right. But again, it's about slipping in a system that is set up to thrive. So when we have new systems being set up in the previous year or two by administrator, and then that administrator leaves, if they're not deep systems, they collapse. And that's part of the things that we've seen before. And that's part of the reason why I'm really pleased that this board has started doing the limited authority boards, because again, we're not setting them up and throwing them out there and hoping they're going to survive the next day. Like, we're trying to do that preemptive training and support to keep them going. But you're right.
And also helpful, if you don't mind me saying, it's that we're able to provide that consistent on-site support. I think so we know this is happening, we're addressing it, and the superintendent's receiving that, and we're working together with his district team to make sure that we're seeing that shift. And toward the end of the quarter, and I think we put that in our report, that we were starting to see things during the focus walks. We were seeing better instruction. They have a TNTP coach that's coming in to help them with the implementation of my perspectives. We have DESE coaches that are literacy people that are coming in and supporting as well. So we have, they're getting this support, and it's just, we've got to build that capacity within that building leader.
I am going to throw this out there too, because I think this is a bigger conversation, Ms. Hunter, too, around the role of cooperatives. And this is something Secretary Oliva has really leaned into and pushed onto. When we start seeing districts struggling, those model we currently have set up is the district is asking for help to come in, because cooperatives are set up as a service center, okay? Not as they're your first line of, and so what the model we have set up right now is we're the ones coming in to help. Mm-hmm. We are coordinating with co-ops to assist us in that, but the authority piece, so I know Secretary Lee is really pushing in on that about how can we do a better job with our local cooperatives, pushing in before it ever gets to the point where we're in there trying to directly coach that principal to be a principal, and making sure that we've got systems set up to do that. And so I think this hits on the same conversations we had before about how do we get so far down the road when we didn't know, and we really got to build that local regional part of being the first people to recognize that there's a problem, and that they're the ones pushing in and walking the halls with superintendents and principals and trying to prop it back up before it's so to the point that we're sending people from the state to go in and try to do that. So I think there's a much bigger conversation, and I think it lends to what you're trying to do as a subcommittee too. I think Mr. Wood, when you guys start bringing districts in here and we start seeing patterns, and the question becomes, who has the ability to help with that? And if it's no one, or if it's waiting until you get to this point, then that's a gap we got to fill.
I had a question about the Lee County, the Lee High School principal. This is the one that you mentioned was first year administrator. So understanding that he's first year administrator, is this his mentorship year, or did that happen prior?
This is his mentorship.
This is, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's great, thank you.
Absolutely. Could I add a couple of positive things about Lee County? I feel like I'd be remiss to not say some positive. So I checked on enrollment today, because we were steadily losing students, and so we are up right now 61 students K-12, and this is the one that I'm celebrating, and you'll be excited about this one, Ms. Keener. 60 pre-K students. And they're using, is it Launchpad, correct? And we saw the data from the pre-K coming into kindergarten last year was amazing. And so we know that that's going to continue to grow. One of the things that Dr. Stone is really focusing on is the early childhood, and building that pre-K 2 program and making it strong. And it is, well, you mentioned that Anna Strong. When you go there, you're seeing that the system's there. We haven't had the leadership turnover at the elementary, and the teacher turnover is slowing down as well. And the other thing I wanted to celebrate is that they're down to 14 teachers working under a waiver, and of those 14, 13 of them are on a pathway. And the one that is not on the pathway, this will be her last year with the district. She's been with the district many years and filled a gap when they needed it, and she knows that it's time to go home. So I just wanted to celebrate those things as well, and let you know that there are some great things happening in Lee County. And if you didn't get the invitation from Dr. Stone, he wanted me to make sure that I mentioned that they're having the groundbreaking for the teacher housing project that's being funded with ESSER funds, and that's next Thursday at 9 a.m. So you're all welcome to attend, and I think it's going to be real cold and wear a jacket.
Yeah, and I look forward to Dr. Stone coming to present too, because, and I think I've shared this before with you, but one thing that he has done is he has really reached out to the community stakeholders. You have Lee Academy, which is a private school within the district, and you're talking about a community that was kind of divided, and he brought the 2 schools together. They've done, our students have gone to their pep rallies and cheered for them with their band. Their students have come to our school and celebrated, basketball and different things. They've done joint plays together with theater,
And so as he's trying to expand his career in technical areas, we've been talking to him about, hey, reach out to the private schools, see if their students want to participate in those courses.
Right.
There's funding to be shared between the two of them, and be able to try to prop up some other career and technical things there.
Right.
And that's because Dr. Stone has gotten out into the community and said, we got to figure this out. So we'll bring him in to
Right.
share.
He'll want to share the barbering program, so I won't talk about it, but there are a lot of people interested in the barbering program that they've started as well, so.
One of the things I was impressed with is their attendance rate is also up.
Yes,
Which speaks
absolutely.
volumes. I know
Mhm.
schools are really struggling with that
Right.
right now, but
Right,
I
their
think
daily
they had
attendance.
the highest percentage of all the reports that you brought to us today.
Mhm.
And they're on a different calendar too. They follow, some of the districts in that area have more of a year-round calendar. It's not a year-round one, but they're on a different,
Mhm.
and it seems to work for them.
Right, teachers, what was it, 94% maybe approval, or 91%, so when they
Not
went
4-day.
back- No, it's not a 4-day, it's that they started early, mid-July, and they take some intermittent breaks throughout the school year, and that has been extremely popular with the staff, the students, and they've not had any pushback from the community and the parents. Mhm. He actually presented for AAEA this week to talk about that and talk about the calendar and what they did to promote that. So this is our second year with the extended contract.
You want to
calendar.
talk about Watson Chapel?
Yes, ready to talk about Watson Chapel. As I said, Mr. Wilson and Dee Davis are joining us via Zoom. If you have any questions for them, I'm just going to present some highlights, and then if you have questions, feel free to ask me, or I can refer to them. So just to talk a little bit about the safety, because we know that was one of the big concerns that we had when we first went in. And based on the observations that I'm hearing from our staff from OCSS that are on site, we have someone there every week. And at least a couple of people now are going weekly. So they're going into the buildings and providing support and providing specific support in the special ed department. But they are saying that they are seeing a much safer environment, and the things that the district have reported that they've done, they're observing those things. I talked to Mr. Wilson this week, and he was sharing with me that he is considering or looking into maybe a different or an additional personnel or a different company, security company, so he may want to speak to that a little bit. As far as human capital, one of the things that we are doing is making sure that the principals are getting the support they need. And I think they told you last month that they were looking at an external support provider. That goes to the board this month. And so I have spoken to the co-op director at Arkansas River and asked her if we could all come together and then talk about what support we're doing, what we're providing for the building leaders, for the teachers, and make sure we're coordinating all of that, even at the district level, so they're getting the support they need, and that we're not running over each other and giving misinformation. Sometimes too much support gets in the way. So we want to make sure that we are helping lift them up, and so working closely with this group if their local board approves that, so that, and they have a pretty big proposal to support them at the district and the building level. Also see what else I wanted to share with you. For academics, some of the concerns we had, definitely the master schedule. And so they're already talking about next year's master schedule. We had a meeting this week via Zoom to just look at all of the components of a master schedule, the things that you need to be thinking about. And so they joined that. They are going to be joining the face-to-face training we're going to have at Arkansas River Co-op. So they're getting on top of that, looking at their staffing. They're doing a staffing analysis right now. And I will say, they're not overstaffed, and they do have a large number of teachers that are working under a waiver. And he's very aware of that, and continuing to work on recruiting teachers that are licensed in their areas. So that's all that work is going on right now at the district level to determine what positions they need. Because if you recall, when we first went there, one of the challenges they said with the master schedule was they didn't have enough teachers for the electives, which created a problem at the high school. So that work is going on right now. They're working on their student success plans, and they are right now, the 8th graders are in a career development class, and they will begin, they just came back from Christmas break this week. So they will start that work on developing their student success plans. And then during the advisory period, which they move from the first period in the day, and so any of you with high school experience know you never have an advisory period or a intervention period first period, because you know what happens. They don't come till second period. You know, it gives them some time to sleep in. So they shifted that, and it's by lunch. So during that time, they're going to be making sure that there's specific things and expectations for what should be going on during that time, because I've also witnessed that time as being a waste of time. So one of the things that I have asked that they, during their focus walks, that's part of their walk, is to see what's happening during that intervention time. But 2 days a month, they are going to be going over their student success plans and looking at what they should be taking. And so we're making sure that the students are on those pathways and getting the right classes and enrolled in the right classes for graduation. And then finally, the wraparound services. We know that that's an area that needs additional support, as well as special education and dyslexia. They are currently giving additional level 2 screeners, and they're looking at adding 2 more people to provide interventions in dyslexia. And I think that advertisement was supposed to go out today, according to Ms. Davis, and they may be able to share more as well with that. And I believe that was really all I had to share. If you have questions for me or for Superintendent Wilson or Ms. Davis.
So I just want to clarify, they are making progress.
They are making progress.
But the area that we feel like there's a lot of attention that we're working on right now, because we feel like we've got the safety part
right
handled. One of the areas that we're really putting a light on is special education and dyslexia support, and making sure that is getting ramped up. So that's an area of emphasis right now, that the next time Sheila reports or the following time, hopefully we're going to be able to report with that we address some of those areas.
Thank you, yes. And I do want to say that Julie Amstutz, who is on our team, is going weekly. She spends the entire day there. She's working with the teachers directly, and then they have that early out for professional development. And so during that time, she's doing the training that she's recognized based on her work with the teachers that they need. So that's being provided weekly as well.
Did they remove the double study halls?
They removed the double study halls.
Successfully?
Yes, and the early dismissals.
Yes.
My understanding is there are no students that get that, but maybe we could ask for to confirm that from Ms. Davis or Mr. Wilson, if that would be okay.
Are the seniors furious?
You know they are. I'm just sure of it.
Mr. Wilson, did you hear that question?
I didn't hear all of it.
It was about the study halls for your high school students.
Done away with those. We also were able to fix the lunch where, we had 400 eating at one period and then 200 at the other period. Well, now the numbers came out the other day. I think it's about 358 or something like that to 314, or it's really the numbers have equalized almost. So we were glad to get that done, because there were too many kids out at one time during a lunch period. So that's working out good. I think the sense of urgency has really came full bloom with the staff, and I'm proud of our staff. I'm proud of them pulling together and everybody working together now as a team, so we can move forward and we can get all these things taken care of that we've got to do. We've got to improve our structure. We got to really work on our special ed program without a doubt, and finding people is going to be the key. We are advertising for dyslexia aides and also special ed teachers and aides, and it's just finding the people. We got to get the people in place. We got to train the people. We got to train the people we have and make sure they know their obligation and what they're supposed to do. And I think that's going to be the key element.
Board members, questions? Mr. Henderson, Mr. Bragg, Ms. Woods, Ms. Rollins, Ms. Hunter, Mr. Wood. I wanted to point out, the Marvell Lane report included their interim data. I don't know when Watson Chapel is doing, what their interim assessment looks like, but I would love to see in all these reports next time.
We will be.
that
So they're
interim
not
data.
finished. Yeah, they're testing now. So that's the plan. We'll have that interim assessment data for you. So we'll have the beginning of the year and the middle of year.
Okay.
Some of them are administering assessments right now.
And I think in Marvell Lane too, it would be helpful to have that for the past 3 years. You know,
Yes,
to be able
and
to
actual
compare
numbers
over
rather
time.
than just showing the percentage growth, so you can actually see what they're
Yes.
growing at. Yes, a little
Yes.
more detail. So I'll talk to Dr. Tran about that.
Yes. And then what is with Watson Chapel right now? Are we going to continue to do monthly updates from your
Okay.
team?
I guess that's up to
And
the
that's at the
board.
direction of this board.
Yes.
Our understanding was that you wanted us to continue the monthly report.
Okay.
Ms. Keener, I know you wanted to brag on Helena, West Helena, and I didn't want this opportunity to
I was
pass by
hoping. I
without
never
you.
know when it's okay for me to make comments, and I don't have, this is not an official board report, but I did have the pleasure of spending the day, or spending the morning down there the other day, and it was just a wonderful visit. Watching, certainly the superintendent there, he's, Dr. McGee, he doesn't miss a thing. He was excited to show me all the things that are going well, but also completely understood they're still experiencing a lot of challenges. And he just has a very realistic, very sort of pragmatic but hopeful outlook. And you could see it come through in every staff member we visited with. The kids were on task and doing well, and it was great. And and he has invited, I sort of invited myself down to come and read. They're having, he has some reading days, community reading days, where people from the community come in once a month and read. And I asked for the sign up, and he let me sign up. So if anybody else is interested, I'll forward it to you, and you can go down and see it for yourself. It was exciting, and it was really fun watching him walk into the high school, because that is kind of his place. That's his age, and so he really lit up there, and but was always still alert. You know, when all the classes were merging and switching classes, he was kind of on alert watching, but at the same time still acknowledging, calling students by name, and mentioning the game they had coming up, or really specific connections with kids. And then we ended in an advanced math class where he actually stepped into the lesson and took over while I hid in the back and prayed he didn't call on me, but it was fabulous. So such a fun day, and I want to do more of those visits, particularly in these support, the level 5 support school districts. So I enjoyed that. Thank you.
That does not shock me that he took over. Not at all.
I was doing it in my head and really hoping I was right, so, but hoping he didn't call it. It was great.
We do focus walks, and I've done focus walks with him, and he does not hold back. And when we have the debrief, because we go into the classrooms, do our walk, and it's coaching those principals, but he's animated, and he notices those things that they need to work on. So yes, they're moving the needle. I would be in trouble if I didn't mention that.
That's
It's moving the
name of
needle,
the reading day.
moving
That's
the
right.
needle
Yes,
and
thank
reading, and it's one day a month. Go on the website and sign up, and you can sign up for one day or every day in the month. And so you just go in, they have the book picked out for you, and you can stay from 8:30 to 10, or you can just do one slot. But I think you would absolutely enjoy it, and that's the part of my job I love, guys. So I want to encourage you, if you have a chance, to come visit any of our districts that we're working with, because that's it's about the students and making sure that we keep the student focus in mind as we're doing this work. There are systems, and we talk about the systems and the processes. It's students, right? And so we always come back to that. So that was my little sermon. I'm sorry. And I did it without crying. So there. It's a first. Thank you.
Yeah, any more questions or comments, board members? At board reports, does anyone have anything they want to share over this past month?
So it's more of a shout out to a teacher, but it was a feel good story, and so I got permission to share it. But at the beginning of the 2022-23 school year, a little kindergarten boy walked into his first day of kindergarten, and he had basically been put in foster care because he was doing adult jobs that no 5-year-old, 4-year-old should have to do. Meanwhile, his kindergarten teacher had just gotten approved to be a foster parent. And so throughout the course of the year, they were communicating with the teacher, like, he's probably going to be pulled out, just so you're aware. And she and her husband decided to volunteer to become his foster parents. And on Monday, the judge awarded them full adoption. And so his kindergarten teacher is now his mom. He ended up changing his middle name to match his now dad. And so it was really sweet. And she teaches for kindergarten at Don Roberts. One of their other teachers' daughters adopted his sister. So that whole community right now has been able to just fully adopt those kids. So I wanted to share that because Don Roberts just deserves a shout out for what their teachers are doing.
Thank you for sharing. Other board members? Activities over the past month? We'll get to move on to Mrs. Salon's report.
After I shed tears.
Yeah. Power of teachers.
I love that. So I have my January State Board report for you all, which basically recaps the month of December. So I actually, December is a short month in education, but I tried to pack a lot of things in there really quickly, and I started out on Wednesday, December the 6th. I was invited to speak at the pinning ceremony for for graduating seniors at Arkansas Tech University's College of Education. So I shared with them 6 tips of practical professionalism to assist them in their transition from college to the classroom. And they were all in the process of applying for jobs. And right after the ceremony, I stopped and talked to a few of them, and one of them had a job offer. She's here in Little Rock, so I'm going to go visit her in her classroom, in her music classroom at one of the elementaries here in Little Rock next week, weather depending on that. But I told her I would stop by and check on her and just support her journey. And she was like, I need stuff for my classroom. I said, you should do an Amazon wish list. She posted and she had people buying things for her first classroom, and so she was just so excited. But to me, that was a special moment. I graduated, my MAT is from Arkansas Tech, and I had my pen from my graduation, and they actually gifted me a new pen to match the new graduates, so I was really touched by that. So I was also invited to be the keynote speaker at a regional conference for Educators Rising at Arkansas State University, and I absolutely loved their theme. It was discovering your potential, and I presented to students who are interested in becoming teachers and getting a hold of them early to commit to education, and we discussed discovering their potential and providing them with personal and professional growth strategies and tools just so they can get in the mindset of transitioning from high school students to college students. And I actually visited with 2 of my former students who are now students there, and I got a chance to check on them, make sure they were eating and washing their clothes and just, doing things that they were supposed to do, and they were actually prepping for finals. So it gave me the opportunity to connect with them. And then this is Cassidy Seidenschner. She may look familiar because she was one of the 2024 ATOY semifinalists, and she is the library media specialist at Hurricane Creek, and she invited me to come and be a guest reader there at the elementary. So I read the book To Catch an Elf, and I made sure my sweatshirt matched the theme of the book. And she does something really cool where the audio matches me reading, and so it has sound effects while I read. It's incredible. And so she let me do that with the book, and I'm just super excited about that, and the kids loved it, and we had a really good time together. And then during the month of December, I surprised a few of our aspiring teachers in their classrooms to celebrate and congratulate them on their graduation. Students were so proud to tell me about their amazing teachers, and they're graduating from their programs and getting their standard licensure. And so we just wanted to take the time to celebrate them. And each of them got a Rocket book, which is one of the things that I love. If you love to handwrite your notes and then they transfer over to digital. And so this one is one that's designed by teachers for teachers. And so we love that. And then to cap things off, just Tuesday, I arrived back because I went to the 2023 National Championship game to watch Michigan. And Michigan fans are quite intense in Washington. And my cohort was presented to the crowd during the pregame ceremony on the 10-yard line. And so I had this bright idea to wear red shoes, and there were 3 of us. But if you look in the picture to the right, you can see 3 pairs of red shoes because all of us had the same idea. And over the past year, I've met some of the most amazing educators from across our nation and territories. And my heart is full for everyone's passion for education and hearts for students. and that top right-hand picture is actually a word cloud that was made by our National Teacher of the Year, Rebecca. She sent a Google form, and these are the way that we see each other. So those are words that describe me for my cohort. And one of them says I'm a Southern Belle, and one of them says I'm like sweet tea with a little bit of spice. And so I'm going to frame that and kind of keep that because that just meant so much to me. I also did a 5K while I was down there and got my very first medal. And so we had to walk to the race and then walk back. So I actually did a little bit more than 5K. But this has been such an incredible experience. Pretty sure my husband was very excited to say that I was taking him places to his colleagues. So that was our little monthly recap for this month.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's neat. I imagine it was awesome to be out on the field with so many people.
Yes, with 72,000 people.
Wow.
And I was very close to Fantasia when she sung the national anthem, but we couldn't actually talk to her. But she was fabulous from
Cool.
20 yards away. Yes, yes, she was.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. It's awesome to hear from you and to just see your joy as you go out across the state. So thanks for sharing and keep up the great work. With that, any questions, comments, board members? Do we have more commissioners report?
No, we just have a cold lunch, but it's going to be great.
Sorry. Okay. Do we have anyone that signed up for public comments? Okay. Okay, was she gonna come back, do you know, or it was, okay, could we ask for written comment if we needed to? Okay,
And she shared with me what her concerns were too, so I'm aware.
okay. Okay, well, with that will be the end of our meeting. We need a I don't know if we don't have Steve anymore. I don't know if we really need a motion.
It's not Randy's job.
No, it's Randy's job for a motion to adjourn. There's a motion to adjourn, is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. That's the close of the January State Board of Education meeting.
I
forgot to-
Steve just loves to be the person to announce that, so.